Hello everybody, we are back. I apologise for the very short stream on Wednesday. The pin thing got to me. You know how it can be, I know it's kind of a woman thing, but I know men do it too, they just show it differently. You can have great piles of crap going on, and kind of on the surface, you're all right. And then something small comes along, such as you burn the toast, you go to the toilet and there's no toilet roll, and it's just one thing too much. Just one thing. It can be you drop your phone, it can be that you spill your coffee, it can be the tiniest, kind of almost the most pathetic thing. And in fact, the more pathetic it is, the more likely it seems to be the final straw. And the pin thing on Wednesday was the final straw. So this morning I had a meeting about some stuff, which I still don't know whether I can talk about. So it was kind of positive, kind of not. But on the good front, Mr. Posty has come. Mr. Posty has delivered me more pins. So, on the pin front, I have a bit of an update on the pin front. So, obviously, post Wednesday, kind of almost snot dribbling at me as a couple, wasn't that miserable. Well, I was that miserable, I wasn't actually crying about it, but kind of sulkingly depressed. I sat there and I went through my pin pile and did fatsy thinsy, and I have weeded out all the thin pins. On top of that, I got hold of, I ordered some pins, then realised that they weren't actually the thin pins, found the thin pins, ordered the thin pins, and Mr. Posty brought them this morning. So we have pins. So let me put up my usual little kind of say hi notification to try and encourage you people to speak to me, because that's always a thing. I've just suddenly thought of something really horrendous that I need to do. Hang on. I most certainly need to do this. Hang on. Otherwise it's going to go really, really badly. Hang on. See, let's do this. And because this is a thing that I have not been doing very much, it is something that I need to... Right, that is connected, that's good. So... Right, let's do that. So, click, done. Right, so we've got our little message up, that's a good thing. So let me show you the whole pin thing. So, here is my tomato. It's, for scale, obviously it's quite big. If I zoom in, you will suddenly be aware that there are quite a lot of pins. Now, really, there are only a lot of pins on one side, but if I roll it over a bit, you'll see that there are quite a few pins. So I spent a lot of time extracting these pins out of the pile of poo. And if you think about it, I mean, I'm not going to pretend I'm the most domesticated person, and that my house is perfect and all the rest of it, because it ain't. However, at the same time, it's amazing how when you pick up pins with a magnet, you think that because A, the pins landed on top, and B, the pins would be magnet, and things like dog fur would not be magnetic, that it would be quite simple, that you waft the magnet around, you pick up a lot of pins, you then then you hurt yourself a lot pulling them off the magnet. It's surprising the amount of fluff that comes with. And as a result of that, obviously, then when playing Fatsy Thinsies, not only have you got to pick up a few pins, play Fatsy Thinsies with a few of the pins, but also extract out of it the material that you do not wish to be part of either pot. So, I mean, to give you an idea, oops, that's the pot of pins that I rescued. So, if I take the top off, you can see. That was the pins that we didn't want. So as you can see, I had my job cut out for me. There were a lot of pins. And I need to go and rescue wherever that went. It's alright. Something on my table made a run for it. And I don't need the dogs eating it. Because, well, as we know, my dogs are not perfect. So, it is that time. I will do my best. We'll see how far we can get today. So let's look. On Wednesday, we did, frankly, bugger all of nothing, but we did do about 5 pins. And then we cried, because, well, yeah. So, let's release the pins. And look at this. That's you two. So you probably should be up there. You're coming in next. I'm going to put the pin pot up here for now, so that I can get at it. Hello! I'm supposed to have a voice thing, and the voice thing is not voicey thinging. Let me turn the voice thing. Because I really thought I'd turned that on. Stop telling me it's already running. I have a voice thing to tell me that when you speak, in case I'm not looking, because obviously that can be a problem. If I'm looking at the pillow, I'm not going to see you talking to me. So let me go and check settings. That's because I turned it off. There you go. Hello, welcome to the channel. I am slightly disorganised. It's been a long time since I've done a lot of streaming. And this is, and I didn't stream crafting stuff before. I did games, so of course I was constantly looking at the screen, and you know, the sound from the game and everything, and so I could see and tell what was going on. Whereas with this, it's all just a little bit more difficult. So, hello. What brings you to the joyousness that is my lace bobbinness on stream? If you have any questions, do feel free to ask, because, well, that's half the point. That's nice, thank you. And my voice shit's isn't working. Okay, retire to plan B. I have a plan B for that. That's okay. I'll just turn this back on then. I'll turn it on. I really appreciate that. Hi, Tenchi. What the hell is going on? I know sounds should be coming out. Not really. Well, it depends which one, Tenchi. The dog bite on the other dog, she seems to be alright. She's she's licked it a bit now, and she reopened it slightly. So Amy is on the mend. The pin thing clearly was a bit much for me, with all the stuff going on, and so. But I do have two packets of new pins, as well as I rescued all of the little pins out of the monster pile of pins. Oh, don't. I've got pins coming out the wazoo. Because, of course, on Wednesday, I went, yay, it doesn't matter, I've got this big fat pile of pins. They're a different size. So these aren't the fat ones. No, these are the average ones. These ones are the skinny ones. I didn't realise I had 3 sizes of pins. So I've got more of the medium pins coming, because the medium ones are... This is going to sound so anal and so pathetic. So, this pin, she says, pulling it out of the tomato, this pin is 0.4 millimetres wide. Yeah, just picture how small that is. The medium pins, these are 0.5 millimetres wide. The fat pins are 0.63 millimetres wide. So obviously I can't use the fat ones instead of the thin ones, because that really is a considerable kind of fatness. The stop being an idiot side of me said just use the medium pins and have done with it. But I just knew that at least if I changed it mid-square, or frankly mid-project, but at least mid-square, I would forever know which square that was, and it would haunt me that it was different. Now, part of me really wants to upgrade to the medium pins because they don't bend very much, whereas these things, you know how like Uri Geller used to bend spoons on TV, and we all used to go, wow, well, maybe not, but we all kind of went, that's clever. Uri Geller does not need to be involved to bend these pins. I tell you, if you think pin hard enough, 3 of those pins will bend. It's that they are flimsy as hell. And interestingly enough, if you actually search hard on the website, because they are the right pins, I know they're the right pins, because although I put the fat pins in the old pot, you can tell by the maker's thing I got the right ones. If you read it, it says, oh, these are bend resistant. Oh, not really. Well, and this is it. You only have to think of them and they seem to bend, right? These things have the strength of tin foil, aluminum foil for the Americans. But they just seem to be, I mean, they've got the strength of human hair. So they're not entirely without substance, but unless there's a, you know, unless you stood on the whole packet, they're going to bend, right? And pretty much, as I say, you almost think pin and watch one bend in half and kind of go, cheers for that. So I am tempted for all the other squares to use the medium-sized pins, because apparently that 0.1 of a millimetre really does matter. And being 0.1 of a millimetre, at least if it's all in the same square, it's going to be kind of contained to a square. One square may look slightly different, but the truth of it is it'll be, you know, at least each square is consistent within itself. So I am kind of tempted to move to the medium-sized pins because they really don't bend as much. I know this from the fact that in picking them up I bent quite a few because obviously I stabbed myself with them, and the sheer fact that I stabbed myself with them bent them, whereas the fat ones didn't. And the fat ones just drew blood. So it was a painful process, not one that I would care to redo in a hurry, and we haven't even finished one square yet. And I think that was partly what broke me on Wednesday, is that we aren't even 3/4 of the way through the first square, and already we've had the dogs knock off the table, we've had, we've had the pin catastrophe. It's just kind of like, why am I doing this? Is this really the plan? So I am tempted. Now, obviously, the crafting perfectionist side of me says, oh no, you can't change pins mid-project. Oh no. And the other half of me is going, just shut up and learn. You know, it's so I am somewhat in two minds and feeling a little bit kind of unsure. That's right. Probably need to take my jumper off. But it's I just didn't need it, and obviously with the shenanigans going on that I can't overly talk about, I'm pretty sure I'm safe to talk about them now, but no one's actually okayed it, so I daren't, just in case. Just don't need it. So yeah, I could just do with something going right for a change would be nice, something going well. Waking up and discovering a bank error in my favour. Yeah, I know. And the worst thing is because it's quite prevalent in my daytime life, it's hard not to talk about something when kind of all day, every day, it's something you've got to work with. And that doesn't feel right. No, that's right. Yeah, when you deal with it and it comes up every day and you can't necessarily talk about it, it is really hard, because for 8 odd hours a day you do pretty much nothing but talk about it, and then you have to shut up, and you're like, and it's a big thing, to me anyway. It's a big thing, and it's not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily good, it's just a change. But as we all know, when there's change and you're not really entirely sure 100% of change, it doesn't help, especially when you're on the spectrum of things. And so it's just, I mean, human beings are weird. We don't like to think we're stuck in a rut, but we also don't like change, which is of course a bit of a contradiction, but it's very true. The average human being does not want to change. The average human being does like a routine. The average human does, but at the same time, oh no, I'm not stuck in a rut. I could change if I wanted to, but the problem is we don't want to. And so change is change. Nothing will change, says one. Yeah, that's not true. There is change, but so let me quickly count. That's fine. So yeah, my head's a little bit round and round, and normally I'm quite observant. Normally I remember things, and I am forgetting things. I'm getting confused. I'm not things that would normally be stuff I remember from. I remember all the minor details from everything. No, my brain is not doing any of that, and it's showing in everything, and including the number of mistakes that I make while doing things like this. So it is not ideal. And once everything is settled and it's over, and it can only be, well, I won't say it'll be right, but it'll be something that can be talked about, and you know, people will understand a bit and you know, but until then, we were originally told we couldn't talk about it. So until someone relinquishes that, I don't feel I can. Even though I'm pretty sure I could. But there we go. So yes, confusing, I know. But of course I have to be deliberately vague, because otherwise you'll know what it's about. So that kind of defeats the point. So, yeah, whatever. So yes, it's not... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, I just... It's a hard life. It's hard life. But yeah, I am slightly embarrassed as to how kind of miserable I was on Wednesday. But which is partly why I didn't stream yesterday, because even though I'd picked out all the pins, I wanted, because I didn't know whether I'd have the pins in today, because I think I mentioned on Wednesday, there is a problem where if it's on Amazon and it's Prime delivery, it will generally tell me only after I've paid for it, because beforehand it will go, oh yes, you can have, if you click buy this now, you can have it tomorrow. And then you click buy now and it goes, actually that'll be 3 weeks time, darling. And you go, literally 10 seconds ago you said tomorrow, and even as I clicked yes I confirm I want it tomorrow, and you've now changed it to 3 weeks time. So, but at least you know kind of where you're at, give or take a bit. But given that a lot of the lace making suppliers are, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but kind of grannies from their house almost, they are generally older people, rather than 20-year-olds, for example. But it means that quite often some of them only say go to the post office once a week. They fill up the car and they take it once a week. Or, you know, an awful lot of them, I don't know why, but they all seem to be going on holiday every time I speak to them. So, you know, oh, we're away this weekend. Oh, we're going to be closed for a week. We're going to, you know, so I can't guarantee that if, you know, for sake of the argument, the dogs ran off with my pin pots and buried them in the garden, I'd be able to get some for a week, maybe longer. And so I kind of wanted to keep the pins for today in case the postman didn't come in time. So, I mean, I have been thinking about it and trying to do all the right things, but it's really hard to do the right things because, well, it's hard to do the right things. So I am trying, but I'm also failing. So, and I admit that, you know, it's not a bad thing necessarily. 2, 3, 4, 5. Failure is just that. It is you do not succeed. It does not mean you didn't try. It doesn't mean that you were wrong. It might mean you didn't have the information you needed. It could be a whole manner of things. So failure is not necessarily a huge negative, but at the same time, I still failed. So, but I am trying nevertheless. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought we were a bit fatter than usual. So pop you in there. Out of the way for a minute. You get to go up there. Bring you back down. Actually, out of. Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? Hi, Nautical. As you say, when we were kids, 28 days for delivery was not only normal, it almost was a minimum, because of course, even though back in the day, British Post, if I posted something first class today, it would get there tomorrow. These days it's 5 days. But if you didn't post it first class because maybe you weren't, you know, entirely rich and 10p seemed a lot. I do remember first class stamps being 10p. Not the £1 something they are today. But you sent it off, so it was kind of a week for it to get there, plus the 28 days of delivery, and and almost like a week maybe for the postman to actually give you it. So it was almost like at the end of one school term, before the summer holidays, you were sometimes lucky almost if you got it before the next school term. And I remember we had a lady at work, a good few years ago. I'm going to take my jumper off, so if it gets a bit weird, I'm sorry. But we had a lady, and everyone in our office didn't want to speak to her. They always had a problem with her. They always complained about them, and they just didn't want to speak to her because she was awkward. And I said, fine, give it to me, I'll do it. I'm in that kind of mood. I can, she's going to be bitchy at me. I'm in the mood. I can take that. So she had problems with her Outlook, and it's because she'd put too much in a PST file when they couldn't be bigger than 2 gigs. So I explained it to her. I showed her how to fix it. I sat there and helped her do it. And while it was doing it, we had a bit of a chat, and we were talking about next day delivery and how, as a society, it was not that long ago, because it was a few years ago, not that long ago. Yes. Yeah, do you know, I get that. Stuff that comes from, say, Spain, Italy will be like 1-2 days. Something from the UK? Pfft, weeks. And how? How can it take that long? And it's, but this lady and I were talking about how, even only a few years ago at that point, if you'd gone to an online website and it had taken a month to get there, it was a bit annoying, but you didn't think too much of it. Now, if at 3 o'clock in the afternoon you hit buy now on Amazon and it's not there tomorrow morning, you're getting mad. And when did we change as a society to be so damn impatient? Now, one of the things I don't like... Oh, look, ads in 3 minutes. Oh, happy days. By the way, I was contemplating, should I change the ads to 3 minutes every hour rather than 1.5 every 30 minutes? There's a question for you before the ads come. But it's you pay 97 quid or whatever it is a year so that you can have next day free delivery from Amazon, and 90% of the time it's not next day. It might be free delivery, but it's not next day anymore. And I'm beginning to feel that Amazon Prime is not quite what it worth it like it was, because it's just not always next day. As I say, the number of times I've hit buy now, get tomorrow, click, bought, 3 weeks. Since when's that? Next day, Right, we have now done that bit of cloth stitch. We need to do the next bit of cloth stitch. So I'm going to pin you together. Whether you want to be together or not. Yes, I know there is one on its own over here, but for now you get to be that pile. You get to be unleashed, as you are this direction. And actually, we don't want to do you next. We need to do some grass stitches. I had it the other day, Tenchi. I ordered something and it was due to arrive Monday. Can't remember what it was, and to be honest, what it was is irrelevant. But I ordered something and it got to Worcester, which is about 20 miles away. Got to Worcestershire. It got to a part of Worcestershire. And then it took 4 hours to re-arrive back at the same place that it started. Then it took another, I think it was 17 hours to get to the place 12 miles up the road. And you're kind of going... And of course, they were supposed to deliver it Monday, and it came through as, oh, it's delayed. Well, yeah, because you didn't freaking do it. If you'd done it, it would have been all right. I didn't really want to undo you either. Oh, for goodness sake, woman. So yeah, as you say, central processing hubs can be beneficial, and they can also be a nightmare when it seems to go far. I mean, there was one thing I ordered when I ordered my loom. In fact, when I got my fancy loom, it went kind of past me to Birmingham, and then from Birmingham to Bristol, and then from Bristol back up here, and it's kind of like you drove past me like 3 times. Seriously, since when is this a thing? Right, let's do some of this. So, you've been twisted twice, that's good. My tomato's on the roll. Don't die, tomato. It's not worth it. Definitely not worth it. Don't be sad. You stand up there. Put a pin in that hole. I can't put a pin in it because there's already a pin in it. It says ad starting soon, so you haven't got one yet, but it's thinking about it. There you go. You accept. Welcome back, everybody. So I put up a little poll. Please vote. As to whether I should try and poke the Twitch bear and change the adverts from either stay as they are, 1.5 minutes every 30 minutes. So I just bent that pin straight enough. Or whether I should try and move them to 3 minutes every hour. At least that way there's more chatting and seeing, and 3 minutes gives you long to go for a pee and grab some drinks. So it is entirely up to you. Fill in the poll and have your say. Because to be honest, whatever you do, the ads are always going to come at an awkward moment. It's like ads on TV. The film's just getting good, and we switch to ads. Oh, assholes. What didn't I do, my peoples? Why am I going to undo all of this? Well, not all of this, but some of this. Why am I undoing some of this? Come on. What didn't I do? What didn't I do? I'm admitting it's not very far back, but it's still not the point. More undos, more stupid mistakes, you know. Did I do that one? No, I didn't do that one either, so it's actually a bit more than that one. Okay. I didn't twist the pear before I started. Because I'm an idiot. This is stupid. Bits of fluff and this bobbin's falling apart. No. Get off my finger. Never mind. Never mind. And now we cross you. And we do. Why is it that the moment I start doing this, I turn into a little raging furnace and I feel really hot? I wouldn't mind, but I know it's not my central heating. No, stone cold. It's not the heating. It is purely me. I'm going to undo this bobbin and rewind it because it's turning into a big pile of annoyance. And I don't need more of those. I've got plenty of those. So that's... Did I finish that? Yes, I did. Move along. Need to cross you, and then we'll do the thing. So yes, hopefully slightly less, I won't say less stress because that's definitely not the answer, but slightly less emotional today would be good. That's definitely the plan. Although if I discover big mistakes, that may still be a bit much. But we will try. Hence we're trying to catch all the little ones that we see as we go. Because we don't really want to surprise ourselves with a colossal one and be faced with undoing half of it. So, because I would feel slightly obliged to do so. The worst thing is knowing that people aren't going to see this. I mean, obviously, I will put up pictures, but, you know, people aren't going to be coming to visit my house, and you know, it's, because I'm not planning on putting, say, in the downstairs toilet or something, you know, people are not going to naturally see this. They would have to physically come look for it and say, can I see it? And go upstairs and look at it. So there is a big part of me that says, why am I so worried about how perfect it looks? Why am I so worried about things like the pin size when only I will notice? Why am I, you know, all these, why am I making myself difficult for that when it's not really a thing? And the answer is well, because it is a thing. Because what if I finish it and I love it and I want to give it to somebody? Well, then it's in someone else's house and I can't be responsible for where they're going to put it. And, you know, they may put it on Pride and, you know, they may put it on their front door or their front window or, you know, I can't be responsible. So I've got to do it as if some, you know, kind of like the Queen's going to come and see it. Now, I know she's dead, bless her, but I'm old. And obviously throughout 99% of my life, we had a Queen. So, and of course, my namesake. So it was kind of, you know, it was a thing. So yeah, it's not like the Queen's going to come and see it. So, to an extent, there is a bit of me that just goes, just make it. And if it's full of mistakes, why are you caring? No one's going to see. But at the same time, well, what if the Queen came round? You know, yeah, like the Queen's going to ever visit me. Well, apart from the fact she's dead. You know, okay, the King's never going to come visit either. So, you know, let's be real about this. You know, if I heard a knock at the door and it was the King, I would literally die of shock, because there is no reason for that to be happening. I'm not even on a major route. It can't even be they broke down outside, because I'm in a dead end. So, you know, it's just not a thing. Mind you, saying that, when I was a child, 1977, the Silver Jubilee for Her Majesty, and obviously as part of that there were lots of celebrations going to be had, and everywhere you could buy these really nasty little plastic flagpoles with plastic flags on. I mean, seriously, they shriveled in the sun. But well, yeah, I mean, mine's usually the, do you want solar panels? No, I fucking don't. If I wanted them, I would have done it with the last 20 people who called. Because it's actually getting to the point of, originally I was kind of like, actually, that could be quite interesting. But the more and more of them have come, the less I'm interested now. It's kind of like a parent thing. Do you remember when you were a kid and your parents kind of said, you should do this, and no matter how interesting thing that might have been, the moment your parents said you must or you should, your brain just checks straight out. Well, it's not necessarily the return on investment in terms of solar panels. With the rather extortionate, which is the only word for it, pricing on electricity here. Anything that you generate and don't have to pay some other bugger for is a bonus, especially as, allegedly, there are schemes that may mean you don't even have to pay for said solar panels. Now, of course, first of all, I'm sure there's only like one person in the entire UK who actually got it for free. Everybody else has to pay something. But any cost off the thing. But of course, the other thing you've got to take into account is they tell you that it's a discounted price, but is it really? Or was it they were charging more than they needed to, and then with the government discount, that's actually what it would have cost. So, call me cynical, but that's kind of where I'm at in life. So, you know, bite me, that's how it goes. I mean, part of me would like solar panels, because obviously an awful lot of what I do is electric. And it would mean that come everyone else getting the power cut, it wouldn't be me. Because I'd still have electricity. As long as the sun was out, I'd have electricity. I say the sun's out, but you know what I mean. As long as there was sufficient lightage, I potentially would still have electricity. So from that point of view, great. And it is not uncommon for people with solar panels, if you've got a big enough house, and I've got quite a wide house, so I could put quite a few on here. My house is not very deep, but it is very wide. It's a barn. It's a fake barn conversion, in that it was designed to look like a barn conversion, but it was brand new. Mainly because there was a barn in the road, so they made my house look a bit like the other house. Anyway, so solar panels, potentially, I could pay nothing for my electricity. And as the predominance of my bill is electricity, it potentially could, I won't say it would pay itself off quickly, but quicker than perhaps many others. Because, of course, I work from home, and without leaking too much information, but to give a hint, instead of one work laptop, I may have two shortly. Well, then I'm going to have 3 fucking computers on at the same time. And that then starts getting a bit more expensive. Now, technically, the Inland Revenue will refund you, I think it's 60 quid a year if you work from home. The fight is almost not worth it. I mean, I know 60 quid's not to be sniffed at, but at the same time, the fight to get the Inland Revenue to do it, bear in mind, obviously my first name's not Liz, I am technically Elizabeth. My lovely employer, for whatever reason known to man, when filling in my tax stuff, wrote that my full name was Liz Kimber. Now, I'm kind of down for that, but legally, that's not my name. I have a middle name and my first name's Elizabeth. So that has always previously been what was on my tax form. And the problem is I had a problem when, for some reason, work changed my name from being Liz Kimber to Elizabeth. And of course, then random people who didn't know me and didn't realise that I would want to draw blood should they call me Elizabeth. So you get like, you put in a help desk ticket because, I don't know, email's gone down, and you go, email's gone down. Elizabeth, I'm contacting you about your ticket. And I'm like, fucking what? I'm already in a bad mood because you called me Elizabeth. I'm in a mood, right? And when you say to them, please call me Liz. Oh, Elizabeth, no, you keep doing that. I'm going to hang up on you in a minute. And so I got work to change my name on the systems. Now there is a preferred name. So did they put it in that? No. Worse. They changed my official name on the work stuff to be Liz, my middle name, which is just the worst thing in my humble opinion. I mean, let's put it this way. I think if my middle name was Fanny, it would be better. Now, let's just go with that. So clearly I hate it quite a bit. And so my name became, let's use Fanny, Liz Fanny Kimber, on a lot of things, which clearly I'm not very keen on. Yeah, Gertrude wouldn't be so bad. I mean, it's uncommon at least. My biggest problem with my name as a whole, so my full name, obviously Elizabeth Kimber, with something in the middle. My parents, I don't know whether they weren't in the mood. I know I was 6 weeks early, so maybe they hadn't really made a decision, and I just kind of went, I'm here now, name me, kind of deal, and they had to do it in a bit of a hurry. But what they did was they looked at both family trees and went, oh, this name appears a lot on both sides, we'll pick that. And oh, when this name appears on both sides, we'll pick that. So I have the same middle name as my mother. And I have the same first name as my grandmother and 500 million other women who have been in my family tree. And it was basically, we picked the most two used names in the family tree. There was nothing more than that. There was no, oh, it really suits her. No. It was, I think, decided long before I arrived in the world. And Franny would have been a better name, actually. For me, at least. But, it's just that kind of, it's always felt to me like it never had any thought in it. It was, oh, that's really common, we'll do that, right? And I guess it's kind of haunted me that that's how I've always felt about it, true or otherwise. I know it's not like I can ask my parents now about it. But it meant that I've always felt a little bit, it was kind of a, oh shit, we've got to give it a name. And rather than, oh, we spent weeks thinking about the right baby name. No, my parents definitely didn't do that. I mean, they pulled out the family tree, but that was about it. And oh, we see a sea of those. We'll have another one of them then. Really? Was that the best you could muster? Apparently so. So I guess because I have that hang up over it, I'm not overly keen on it. I will say that, I've met people who are equally embarrassed by some of their names. I knew a guy whose middle name was Robin. And he hated that. He hated his Robin as much as I do my middle name. Now, to me, Robin's kind of, it's all right. It's, again, there's a bit of you going, oh, it's a middle name. No one really uses it. And then, of course, equally hating your own middle name and want it to be under lock and key. So, to be honest, when I got married, an awful lot of people found out for the first time what my middle name was. Because, of course, it's, I, Elizabeth Kimber, take thee. And they were kind of like, really, is that her middle name? Because I just never told them. Because I hated it so much. So that, it's, middle names, I think, are an awkward thing parents can do to their children. But currently, my tax stuff is under Liz Kimber, which is great. But to claim the 60 quid back from the taxman, obviously I have to prove to the taxman that my name's Liz Kimber. But of course my bank account is Elizabeth Kimber. My driving licence is Elizabeth Kimber. Well, it doesn't match, does it? That reminds me, I'm going to have a problem with that. I might have to find a copy of my birth certificate. Because I'm going to have to reprove who I am in the foreseeable future. Which will cause me an issue, because at the moment I can't do that. I've got a driving licence with a picture on it, and that is legal proof of ID. But for some reason, my current employer, for example, won't accept anything other than passports or a birth certificate. But if you provide a birth certificate, you've got to provide a form of your... We have national insurance numbers, but, you know, your personal ID in terms of work. Yeah, and it is one of those things is that, I mean, everyone knows you as Dave. Everyone knows me as Liz. And in fact, if you don't call me Liz, I'm kind of balling a fist up to whack you with it. But at the same time, it is technically not my official name. Now, of course, Liz is a derivation of Elizabeth. And if you don't know that, where the hell have you been, right? Now, for example, let's say your name was Robert David and you're going as Dave. Okay, that's a little more unexpected because David is not your first name, it's your middle name. But to be honest, I know people who do that. My music teacher, when she had her first baby, she called her... I can't remember what she called her in... let me try and think of it. I think she was Stephanie Emily KV, right? But she was always Emily. She'd been Emily since the day she squatted out and screamed her first scream. But they called her Stephanie. I don't think it is Stephanie because that would be a sister. Because Stephanie and Natalie are the twins. But, you know, it was that kind of thing. I can't... Let's call... I don't know, Ursula. There's a really stupid name. You know, they called Ursula Emily. Well, but she'd always been Emily. So why did you mark it down officially then as her middle name? If you have always and were always going to call her Emily... Exactly. It is your mother when you have done something wrong. And it's not even your mother on a good day. It is your mother when you have done something wrong. And that is, I'm sure, because you're not 12, that you have exactly the same thing. The moment you hear, David... Instantly, you've done something wrong. It doesn't matter what you've done. And I had it at school, and this teacher who didn't know me, Elizabeth, come here. What the fuck have I done? Don't come up to me with that attitude. You called me Elizabeth. What have I done? Well, I was going to hand you out your pocket money. We were on a school trip, and they had money for us and that parents had handed over to them to hand out. You called me Elizabeth. You started this. You know, you need to be careful what you do. And it does. Sometimes people don't understand that your full name has connotations. It's not. It is almost a trauma in that your full name triggers inside you, what have I done wrong now? It is. It is the fighting talk. It's the you call me that, I'm balling my fist because unless I've done something really badly wrong, you're out of line. You know, it's... You know, we don't do that. We don't say that around here. It's not a good word, you know. I mean, I answer to Oi before I answer to Elizabeth, right? I did that for many years, don't ask. But I wasn't pleased about it, I need to point out, but I did. Oi, can you come and do this? I've got a name, you know. But it is one of those things is that full names do sometimes rub people up the wrong way. Especially as... Yeah, you know, my ex-husband is Trevor John, right? Trevor John! Instantly, you know that it's going to be better to find a firing squad than take whatever is coming your way, right? It's just going to be more pleasant. It'll be over and done with at least. And... yeah, every time. And too many people forget that if you don't let people write Dave, Liz, Trev, Bob, whatever. I was going to say Dick, but no one really calls themselves Dick for Richard these days. But Rich, whatever, right? Is that a visitor or an Amazon van? I'll find out in a minute. It's probably the gardener just to really piss me off. But it is that kind of PTSD almost that you get from getting the parental. You hear it from like the house or the far end of the garden or upstairs or whatever. Your entire full name. Oh shit. And it is. It's just the oh shit factor every time. And so when you go for an interview, when you go for a meeting and at the doctor's, Elizabeth Kimber, oh please, can we not? Can we not be doing this? How many times have I got to tell you people, if you don't call me Liz, I'm going to come in with an attitude because you started it. Yeah. My doctors aren't so bad, actually. It's the hospital that always get it wrong. And I actually got really narked with the hospital over my bowel cancer stuff because obviously going for colonoscopies and the like. And on the form, what is your full name? Blah, 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 blah. We are not overly uncommon. However, most of us are not related. I have met some Kimbers in my time. So there is a David Kimber who is on the weaving group. He is not a relative. There is a David Kimber in my family tree, but it's not that one. The only Kimbers that are alive in our family tree are me and my Uncle John and his wife, Evelyn. Everybody else was either female and married out and got a new name, so their kids all have new names, or, well, that was it. Everyone else was female. All the males kind of, well, it was my dad and my Uncle John, so there aren't any other Kimbers. But I went to school, and Kimber is not a common name. It's not ridiculously uncommon, but it's not common. And there was virtually every new class. Are you related to Scott Kimber? No. I have never met the dude. I don't know who he is. And I appreciate that I'm probably the second Kimber you've ever met in your life. But we are not related. And I grew up the whole time kind of going, no, I'm not fucking Scott Kimber's sister. Anyway, I left school, phoned up the library. And he went, can I take your name? And I went, yeah, Liz Kimber. And he went, Kimber? And I went, yeah. And I went, no, I'm not Scott Kimber's sister. And he went, I wasn't going to ask that. And he went, my surname's Kimber. And I went, you're not Scott, are you? It was another one. And he wasn't related to Scott Kimber either. So there were three of us round Ruislip at one point. So, you know, there was a thing. But it is kind of weird that there are obviously other Kimbers. And my dad did do a very extensive family tree. There's nearly 12,000 people on that family tree. Believe me, he got our family tree. I would dispute some of the potential chance of accuracy because records were not kept in early days. Not too surprisingly. And accurate records were a much later invention. My dad reckoned, and I've got the family tree on a computer somewhere, he got back to BC. Bitch, they barely had any records before 1200, so it is a bit word of mouth kind of love. So just because you claimed that was the dad or whatever does not make it the dad, you know? It was maybe likely the dad, or he's prepared to take the hit for it, dad, but it doesn't make him necessarily the dad. And so accuracy before 1200 is a little bit tenuous, or in fact the further back it goes the more tenuous it gets. So from that point of view, I would dispute quite a few of my dad's family tree, or at least as solid evidence. Potentially, maybe, and it may all be true, but it also could be a big load of phooey, so you know, let's truly be honest. So but my dad did do an awful lot of our family tree, and you know, we're not exactly famous for anything, so although my dad did try. My dad did write a book. You will not have read it. You will not want to read it. Nor will you want to own it, buy it, possess it, think about it, or even hear anything other than the title, and that you'll be done. Basically, it was the Works of the Royal Ballet. Now, I can't remember the exact title because I didn't keep a copy. I will have it on computer because I've got his old computer. But basically, it was every single performance they did with every single person who was in it, because they changed people kind of every other week or something, and all of the performances, all of, you know, kind of the history, the a bit. Really adds again. See how we're doing on the poll. You vote for changing. Let's change it. What are we doing that then? Where's the thing? Check that it took. There you go. So I don't know what that will kick in, but there you go. There we go. So yes, as you say, you know, I'll wait for the ads to come back. Actually, it's fair on everybody. So yes, as you say, it's the... Sometimes there are a big blob of identically surnamed people. So not far from where I live, there are a heck of a lot of Newmans. And in fact, there is a Newman museum not that far away. I mean, it's like 30 miles away or something, but it's not that far. And some friends of mine, whose surname's Newman, went in and actually discovered that part of their family is covered by the Newman Museum. And they actually said, we were around there and we were discussing, you know, kind of weird relatives and all that kind of stuff. And they actually said that because I found in my dad's belongings when he died some interesting paper cuttings, as my dad had done a lot of research for the family tree, that an 18-year-old relative of ours, so they were Averys at that point, Murray's, not Averys, Murray's, he went to the First World War, got shot by a tank and died. And he made the paper. And I was kind of like, I didn't know Great Granny's brother had died in the First World War, because obviously it was her brother. And it was kind of like, oh, yes. Okay, didn't know that. And my friend James piped up with, yeah, one of our relatives, we were told he had died in France until 1980 something, where it actually turned out he lived like 10 miles up the road, hooked up with a French hooker. He'd done a runner, was AWOL assumed dead, when actually turned out to be living 10 miles up the road with a French tart. Oops. But this kind of stuff happened. But yeah, they're not related to other Newmans, but they're in the Newman Museum. So it is kind of weird sometimes how... It is, and I think one of the things that... Because me and a work colleague had a conversation about relatives and stuff at one point. And because, you know, I'm sure you, like all of us, at some point you were dragged to some historical shenanigans whatever it was, and kind of like, here's some boring crap that happened somewhere in the region of 200 to nearly 1,000 years ago. Here it is. You will stand around and you'll be dragged around this building, and talks will happen to you, and you will stand there kind of wondering why, your parents agreed to this crap, and, usual shenanigans for school trips, and you're bored out of your tiny little mind, and you're kind of going, what the fuck we come here for? Now, it's not because necessarily the subject was, on its own, boring. The problem was it was boring because they make it boring. They just have this innate way of making a lot of things boring. And my co-worker Steve went along, and like many of us round here, well, he was a bit more south coast than me, but many down here in the south, we all got dragged to the Bayeux Tapestry. Now, how getting how we're getting shot in the eye and all that kind of crap. So, Steve went along, much like the rest of us. Yawn, yeah, tapestry, whatever. Dude got shot in the eye, not my fault, kind of deal. Got home. Years later, turns out, as we all did, you came back, you wrote some frigging essay on the crap, and you struggled to write more than, yeah, it's a tapestry on it, because you really weren't interested. Turned out, one of the people depicted in the Bayeux Tapestry has to be one of his relatives. You see, that's an adult part of you. As a child, you probably would rather have set fire to it than go and see it. As an adult, these things become more interesting. Now, one of the things that reason the Newmans and I were discussing kind of relatives was my granddad, was in the RAF during the Second World War. And he got a really odd medal of commendation, and no one alive knows what that medal was for. His wife probably did. She died. He obviously did. He died. His children do not know. So nobody knows what he got it for. And as a child, I obviously did the school thing, because, it's kind of compulsory. And we got taken to Meppel Outdoor Activity Centre and Duxford, which is an aerodrome thing up in Cambridgeshire. And this isn't adding up. Why is this not adding up? I missed a pin. That's right. And so, I went, age 16, to Duxford, went, fuck, boring planes. Yeah, whatever. Took a few photos of them because, well, I didn't have anything else. Exactly. As a child, you don't appreciate them. And it is a waste of everybody's time dragging your sorry butt on a coach down to go and see it, right? Anyway, I went to Duxford and didn't think too much of it because, it's Duxford and it's got planes in it and yeah, whatever. Years later, I was talking to my dad, and my dad mentioned that my granddad was mentioned in a book. And I was like, what do you mean he's mentioned in a book? So I did a bit of Googling while my dad was on the phone, and I found an excerpt about my granddad on the internet in this kind of webpage about his old squadron. And I was kind of like, I didn't even know what squadron he'd been in. I just knew that he'd been in the RAF. Anyway, then at this point, bear in mind I'm 30 by this time, my dad drops the bombshell. Oh yeah, well he served at Duxford. You mean I went to Duxford? I'd been to a place where my granddad had been, and I loved my granddad with all my heart. You're telling me now that my granddad served there, is probably named on the little plaque of people, because of course, unless you know to look, you're not reading all the names because it's a big plaque of people. And now you're telling me that he'd been there and he probably worked on some of that planes or whatever he did. Now you tell me? I was livid. I have kind of meant to go back. Slightly more annoyingly, oddly enough, since then, my ex-husband has been to Duxford quite a few times. In fact, he almost has a year-long pass to go to Duxford. And he did ask around for me. And they don't have any records. The records were lost, of course. But, so, it's kind of not so much worth me going because, well, I've already been, I've seen what there is to see, but at the same time, knowing that he was there is, it is a kind of touch of history. But if I'd known when I was there, it would have been far more interesting. It's just like when Steve went to see the Bayard Tapestry, if he'd known that technically that dude there's his relative, imagine the essay you would have written knowing that's your relative, right? And, I mean, even if you don't know the relative, because obviously a bit of a time difference, but you can still go, I'm related to this dude. It makes it far more real. And one of the things that the reason Newmans and I were talking about this museum, the Newman Museum, was simply the fact that if you're going to make kids learn history, surely it is far more interesting to that child if you can make it about them. Because as children, you are slightly self-centred, whether you like to think you are as a child or not. To a large extent, you are self-centred. If it is about you, it is way more interesting. So if it is, we want you to, ask your parents and your grandparents and, if they have any family stories from, say, the Second World War. And, because chances are, that's a bit more recent, that can happen. Why are you... That's because you're caught up, that's all right. So you could make it a bit more about the Second War. You could have, Billy Joe's kid... grandfather was an air raid warden. So-and-so was, grandmother was down in the shelters feeding people. So now you can kind of make a story out of them, even if they were, 100 miles apart at the time. But you could make a story about how it might have been for people in their family. And it does make it feel a bit more real. And I've always found this with a lot of the standard education is that here is a boring fact. Here is a boring fact told to you in the most boring way we could come up with it. We expect you to remember this boring fact. We now expect you to write an essay about this boring fact that you really don't care about. And, and then come at the end of the year or two, we'll expect you to maybe write another essay on it. Well, no one cares. Especially not in this country, at least. No one cares. Dog alert, obviously. No one has rung the doorbell, so it doesn't matter. No one's rung the doorbell. Oh, it was an Amazon man, by the looks of it. Yep, fine, whatever. We'll come pick him up in a minute. So, there is that kind of part of you that if you want a child, it's like those books you can get for kids where you tell them the kid's name and they make the kid the kind of protagonist of the story. It's the same. If you can make the historical thing kind of about them. So imagine you were your granddad or you were your grandmother or whatever it was, and then try and research a bit about what it was like back then, and maybe we can make a bit of a play out of it. It makes it more real, and the child is more likely to remember because it's relevant, it's real. Whereas remembering some stupid ass formula or remembering that so and so died or that went the long way around. Yeah, and if you knew that one of your relatives was effectively depicted in that tapestry, irrelevant of how interested you were in the subject beforehand, well, now you're a bit more curious because, well, they're in it. Yeah, it may not be particularly accurate as to looks, because we all know that that's potentially a problem, but you do sit there going, that makes it more real. It's like in First Contact when Picard puts his hand on the missile that is to become the rocket, and Data says, does it make it more real to you? And he goes, oh yes. And Dave puts his hands on, but I just feel metal and the imperfections. And he goes, yeah, but when you can touch it, it's real. And I think if you've got a connection to something, such as, you know, great Auntie Flo was in it, well, then it makes it more real. It makes it stop just being a story that people are telling you. Because, I mean, you think about it. Thank you, dog. An awful lot of history is just a story. And moreover, a story told by the victors, usually. And so it's not necessarily accurate. You know, things did not necessarily go quite the way it says. But we can't prove or disprove it to a large amount because, well, none of us were there. But it is usually a story written by the victor. You know, if you annihilate a total town or whatever and there's literally no living souls, well, they're not around to argue that it didn't happen differently, are they? And, you know, especially back in the days of rape and pillage. So it is one of those kind of... History is just a tale. And it is just a tale until it's more personal. And, you know, whether it's the tale of your people being evicted from slavery or... And I don't disagree that they are not phenomenal stories and that they aren't true. But how much more true is it when it's relevant to you? And, you know, it is... I would like to see education to be done on a more realistic level. Very, and that's exactly why my grandfather... No one knows what my grandfather did to get that medal. Because he did something very heroic, and he was a humble dude. So he didn't want it talked about. So now, nobody alive knows. That history is forever lost. And it was kind of a very profound moment for me to... Because I love my grandfather with all my soul. He died when I was about 13. And... You know, I didn't ask him about his stuff in the war because I knew it was an off-topic subject. You know, maybe if he vaguely mentioned you were not to kind of catch hold of him and make opportunity to ask. It was off-topic. So no, I never asked. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested, because I really was. I'd love to have known anything about him because I just loved him that much. I was like a devoted puppy. But the fact that even in my lifetime... I am aware of lost history. Imagine how much more history has been lost. And like you say, many people, because I didn't realise until a lot later that my gran had been a wren during the Second World War. I didn't realise she would. I thought she was a stay-at-home mum because she already had 2 children by that point. Because my dad was post-war, his brother and sister were during the war. So I assumed that my granddad had been stationed closely, otherwise how do you make children? And secondly, that she'd been at home looking after them. Well, now I hear she's been a wren. Well, if she was a wren, she wasn't at home. Where were the children? Now, they weren't in London because they weren't. So, where were the children? And part of me wants to ask Margaret and David, my dad's brother and sister, where they were, but chances are they were so little they didn't remember or wouldn't remember, or they may have been told that this happened, but you know, maybe that's not entirely the case either. But she was a wren. And what did you do, Granny? I'd love to have known what my granddad. But again, you didn't ask. No, and sometimes it's very deliberate that they won't tell you because they're either embarrassed, don't want to talk about it, or they lie to you deliberately because they don't want you to think worse of them. So even if you had got an answer, it might not be the actual answer. And so, you know, as you've said, there are a number of people of that age who will not talk about what they did back then. You know, you might get, well, this person was a pilot. Oh, that's good. That's I'm not going to say everyone's the same, because of course we're all not. But I do think that there is a common theme in people who were in the war not to talk about it. It's kind of it's done now, we'll move on. Stiff upper lip and all that crap, right? It is almost that level of... Now, some people don't mind, and probably because maybe... I mean, I'm fairly confident, although my granddad did something really spectacularly heroic, he was not directly... he was not out shooting people, right? And the reason I know that is because the book that is available on Amazon, by the way. I haven't read it. I did buy it because, well, he's in it, so I bought it. But the excerpt on the website from the RAF site, it was a fleeting mention. So I'm not expecting much about my granddad in the book, and I know that the book does not cover what my granddad did, so because my dad did read it. But in essence, the website pointed out that my grandfather was an adjunct, which is basically paper pusher. So, he was not designing planes, designing bombs, flying airplanes, saving people with blood squirting out of them in the middle of the battlefield. He wasn't doing anything of the sort. He was behind the scenes doing the paperwork. Now, I'm sure there was more to it than that, because, again, back then they did like to not tell you exactly what people did, because, well, you could target them. But it was, I'm fairly confident to a large extent, he did not do anything on a daily basis that was worthy of conversation. He probably saw the paperwork for an awful lot of interesting conversations. But of course, official secrets act, darling. And being my family, everyone in our family's been a little bit kind of, I won't say autistic, but if autistic had been a definition, probably. In the sense of, if you've told us it's under the Official Secrets Act, that will be it for the rest of their life. And he would, right? So, and it's not, I'll tell you, but I'm not supposed to. And I didn't twist that one again. Fuck's sake, woman. Anyway, so I would love to have found out more about what my granddad did, but knowing that records have been lost, knowing that that it's not as simple as all that kind of thing, I don't know, it would be nice to... But, even some of that, even though your granddad's told you a great pile of stuff, which is all I think is fantastically awesome, there is also a whole load of stuff he will never have told you. It was a very different time, and obviously one we can't truly relate to, and so they probably wouldn't tell us, just because it would be hard not to judge them with the eyes of the day. I mean, you think, so for example, slightly controversial topic, all these celebrities who in the last 20-30 years have been done for abuse. I'm not saying that they didn't deserve it. Need to stand on record for that. But if you go back to the 70s and 80s, as a kid, if an adult wanted to talk to you, they plonked you on their knee and you sat and talked to them. It was not because they were all creepy. It was normal. Now, I'm not saying that there weren't creepy people, because there were creepy people, clearly. But an awful lot of things. I mean, I remember... Yeah. And that's the thing, is that, as you say, you're looking at just a tiny portion of something that can't be under official secrets, can't, it's not like, oh my god, you can't talk about that. But at the same time, you can't find out about dressmaking from the kind of First World War till post Second World War. And it's disappointing that we've lost so much, especially when you look at how much bullshit is on the internet today. I mean, how many duck-faced people with overdrawn eyebrows, pink, well, very pale pink lips and fake tans do we need pictures of, right? You can't move for a sea of them these days. Okay, slightly less now, but not a lot. But you can't find out about more fundamentally useful things, such as history, because records weren't kept. I know a guy at work, he's 60-something. Someone at work wanted a copy of his school certificates. So he wrote to the school and said, hey, I've been challenged to prove that I have O-levels in this, that and the other. And they went, oh, that's a shame because it all burnt down like 10 years ago. Never mind, eh? Even records of his own education, the only place they exist is in his memory. And should he lose a few marbles, well, they won't be there either. And once he's gone, it's gone. It seems that we are very careless with history. We need to learn from it, but we also don't seem to keep good records of it. And as I said, it is usually written by the victor, but not everything's a victory and there is not always a winner and a loser. Sometimes it is just a story of a day. I have changed the ads, so this might be the last one for a while, hopefully. It looks like it will be. So there'll be ads in 3 minutes, but then after that it should be every hour. But as you say then, you know, all you want to do is find out about dressmaking from people back then. Now, my mother used to make dresses. My mother taught me to make a dress. I mean, I don't know why, because I didn't wear any, but she made me make one. I wore one as my school uniform. God fucking help me. I had to make my own school uniform. I come from a family who were not well off. I'm not going to say we were poor, because we were not, living in a cardboard box under a bridge, but we were not wealthy. We did not have money, and so my parents, my mother especially, made me make my own clothes. So age 9, I am having to make my own clothes. You find me kids today who can even sew on a bun. Mind you, find me half the adults today don't even seem to know how to sew on a bun. I saw something the other day on Threads. How do I sew on a name tag? Well, poke the needle in and out, and then when you can't yank it off easily, you're done. It doesn't have to be glorious. It just has to be attached. Basically, her father's in a, I say her, I think it's a her. For the father's in a OAP home, and someone keeps nicking his clothes. Well, so they want to put name tags in. Well, I don't have a problem with you putting name tags in, but, you can't even hack on a name tag? People of my grandparents' age would be mortified. Come on, pinny, pin. You're bent already. Excellent. These pens are shit. Right. And expensive for what they are. change that, haven't I? Go away, box, go away. That one. It's... Need to move my drink, can't see past it. Right, do that. And then this. There. That should be it. There we go. There you go. So, according to everything that I see, the next adverts are in 58 minutes. So, we should be good for a bit. Because they do seem to come around quite fast, has to be said. I've noticed that with Thor's stream. You know, he still seems to be talking about the same tiny bit of conversation that he's been nattering about, and yet we're now on the second chunk of ads, and it's kind of like, that seems awfully quick. But sometimes the half hours do seem quick, and sometimes they don't, so. But yeah, I have changed it for an hour, and it still did 30 minutes for that one, but the next one, but it's now come up with an hour. So I've also changed my message so that next time we see it, it should say 3 minutes per hour. So we can always hope. So yeah, I think I won't say I lay awake worrying about it, but I do find it horrible to think of the amount of history that we have lost over the years. The amount of really good, interesting information. I mean, one of the most blatant obvious things is, how the hell did they make the pyramids? We don't know how they did it. We still haven't worked out properly how they did it. Christ, we can't even decide where Stonehenge came from. Because, of course, originally it was, oh, it came from Wales. Now we're convinced it came from further up the country. Well, that makes it even more complicated, because they couldn't just float it down a river, although floating really heavy bits of rock is not exactly an easy job. But, okay. It just seems that we are... And we still really don't know how they built that. Obviously slave labour is a wondrous thing, but even so, back in the days, they did not live long lives. And... but I would love to... I do feel sad that we've lost history. Because... Some of it was pointless. So for example, if you guys don't know what I ate for breakfast, no one in the entire universe cares. Well, I went to Egypt, and if you've ever seen St. Catherine's Point, it is a solid lump of granite that's like 30 metres tall. They cut it out of granite lying down. That bit doesn't sound quite so impressive. Well, it is when you look at the one that they were doing that snapped. And you realise that the gap between the point that they were cutting out and the edges of the sides I almost couldn't put my hand in there, let alone my arm. So how are they digging and cutting accurately, and it was accurate and straight and beautiful, through granite? And more to the point, not only did they cut downwards into the granite, underneath was also, it was like 1.5 centimetres. It was not big margins. So how did they do that? They don't have high pressure lasers and all that kind of crap. So how did... I know how they got straight horizontal lines of water, but to think about it, cutting through 30 metres in length, in height in reality, but in length of rock, it's kind of like 2 or 3 metres square. So it's got to go down 3 metres and then underneath and across 3 metres. That's still impressive, even by today. Even though we know how to a large extent how they would have done it. The fact that they worked that out and did it, the fact that the pyramids line up with certain stars, the fact that one particular pyramid is set so that the guy whose pyramid it is, don't ask me which one it is, it's down at Abyssimbel, and I do not remember which dude it was, but dude in the pyramid, the sunlight hits his figure pretty much only on his birthday. Think about that. They calculated and knew enough, well, obviously because it was their timepiece, but so obviously it was a bit more familiar to them than it would be to us, but even so, they could make that level of calculations. The Mayans were the same. They calculated things and worked stuff out that, in essence, we would still struggle to be accurate with today. And again, the Mayans moved massive chunks of rock. And how? Whether you've still got 500-600 people, you've still got to attach enough string and have people and have something strong enough to lift it with. And not damage it and crunch it. Okay, so let's say you put some rope under or something underneath it, and you try and drag it up sides, ka-clunk, ka-clunk, ka-clunk. Well, you're going to damage everything doing that, but they didn't damage them. So how did they do it? Obviously the pyramids originally had a cladding on them to make them smooth. Some of them had fancier tops. But it is still... Well, exactly, especially as they weren't exactly willing. And they wouldn't have been the healthiest people alive, let's truly be honest. So, however which way you look at it, despite all the slave labour and all the horrificness that they must have endured, and it really will not have been fun for pretty much everyone except for his greatness, who's having the idol of himself made or whatever. But things like the Sphinx. How in the name of mercy do you carve something that big? Well, right? It is a monumental feat. And as you say, all the people getting everything sorted, the smell, but everything would have been... It's hard to picture that working. I mean, let's face it, if someone said, I'm going to build a load of pyramids... Now, I'm not so convinced that it was in the sand at the time, because obviously the desert is moving. But the truth of it is it wouldn't have been far away. So, but if, we as a society decided to make some pyramids today, we would struggle. It would take years. It would take a crap load of money and all. But of course they didn't pay people back then, so it wasn't quite the same. But can you imagine... Even today, I mean, think of the Channel Tunnel, for example, drilling between England and France. Years of expensive machinery, fights, issues, flooding, the whole shebang, right? And that was just a tunnel. Okay, a couple of tunnels, but you know what I mean. There is so much that we look, you have to look back and go, they knew information. You think of Chinese medicine. Part of the reason Chinese medicine is still practiced today is because it's very effective in a lot of things. I mean, sometimes you still need surgery. It's still a thing. But, mix this and that and stick it in one of those and wipe it across this and, attach it to the balls of your feet, whatever it is, right? Sometimes it does seem a little strange and a little bit kind of out there. But a lot of their stuff does help. It may not cure it, but it does help. Well, how much of our history have been lost about things and plants. And talking to the Tesco's man, because one of my favourite conversations at work has always been Og the caveman. So Og the caveman, the reason he's called Og is obviously back then, words were not the greatest part of the of humanity. Og. But Og and his wife living in a cave. Og's wife comes back with pretty berries. Nom nom nom, tastes nice. Share with other people. Nom nom nom. What if... But then you had things like other tribes would come along and it'd be poisonous to them. Think of all the people throughout the course of history who have died so that, for example, you can have a pizza, you can eat a burger, and know that you're not going to die. Think of the blowfish, people. The blowfish. There's a stupid thing we do. But at the same time, you think of things like coffee beans, tobacco plants, the things that, sometimes it's the process of you have to do this to it, that to it, the other to it, then you will do something else to it before it's even remotely edible. If you do that to it, it'll become poisonous. If you mix it with this, you're going to die instantly. But at the same time, a small amount of it in the right situation will save your life. Mercury is one of them. And so there is a whole kind of forest of things where you are sitting there going, throughout history, lots of people died so that we can have the life that we have today. And we don't give them a second thought. We just go online and click yes I want, and below it appears. I have takeout days though. It's my only vice in life is that I have takeouts on Fridays. And for me to have, I don't know, nachos and cheese and jalapeno peppers and a burger, people died for me to have that. I should be slightly grateful, but I'm kind of not. And I just kind of scoff them and kind of go, I paid a lot of money for that, and I've already eaten it. But you do, you sit there and... I wish that as children we had more interest in our surroundings, more interest in things of how they came about. Because learning them as an adult is actually easier, to be fair. As an adult, you generically learn far quicker and far easier things than you did when you were a kid. But at the same time, as a child, we give you the time and the expectation to learn. So, and then we make it as dull as we can. I'm sorry. And you wonder why an awful lot of 16-year-olds are bunking off school. Well, a lot of teenagers are bunking off school and kind of going, oh, I hate school. Because if you could make a subject more boring, you lot have signed up for it. It's a shame, really. But we've had a good natter on it, which is always a good thing. But yeah, I do hope that you find more information. But as you say, there's actually a lady on YouTube that... And that's the thing, is you can teach something that is arse-numbingly boring, that, frankly could put a sane human being in a coma. But you can make it interesting if you try. The problem is you've got to try. There is a lady on YouTube, and I will dig her out and try and find the link for you. Hang on, let me go do that now before I forget. Now, she does historical dressmaking recreations. So you probably already found it, to be honest. Let me see if I can find her. Hang on. She's British. She's... and I got to remember what she's called, because it's not... Yeah, it's not kind of... I don't remember her name, but if I say to you she's got a really, really weird voice, does that ring a bell? She's got a very bad speaking voice due to trauma. and she's really, really nice. But she's recreating historical things. She works out the patterns. She goes to museums and works out how things are made and then makes them. And she's really interesting. Yeah. Yes. That's the one, Kathy Hay. I don't know why she's got such a bad rep in a way. Now, I know that one of her projects was deemed distinctly untasteful because the ball that the gown was worn at was historically what we would think of today as inappropriate. But of course, back then it wasn't. And that is one of the things that like I was saying about the celebrities. So I'm not saying that what they did was right, but in the eyes of the day, it was not as wrong as the eyes we look at it today. Because I know that, as I was about to say, I think when back in sort of 99, 2000, there was a big thing in the British news because some 16-year-old girl had tied herself up, found that a particular well-known football team were at a certain hotel, got invited to their room. They kind of took turns. And of course, it wasn't consensual. Well, first of all, love, what did you think you were going to their room for? I mean, it isn't a right, but kind of, what did you think you were going... You're not exactly going up there to play, Tetris on a Game Boy, are you? I strongly believe she probably knew what she was doing. And to a large extent, probably was up for it at the time. And maybe it got out of hand. I'm not going to pretend that that's not a thing. Because, I've seen people do it. I've seen people get, go out in all but nipple tassels and a thong, pour themselves over somebody, agree to go back to their room, and the next morning, regrets, right? But at the same time, that doesn't make it rape. Now, I'm not saying this poor girl was either way. I wasn't there, I can't pass judgment. But at the same time, when you're 16 and you go up to rooms with very famous people, unless they said, oh, we've got a signature, I can give you my football shirt, and then they kind of drag you in the room. Yeah, don't worry, they'd run and scream if I went dressed out like that. So, oh my God, the blob, it's coming! But it is... I'm not saying it's right. And as the truth says, no woman is asking for it. But at the same time, they're not exactly doing much to stop it. I mean, I've always said, if you go out drinking and you vomit and you're face down with your butt in the air with no knickers on... I wasn't aware of that one. I wasn't aware that she'd pushed the self-help stuff. I mean, I've watched some of her stuff, and obviously I pay attention to her learning about how to make things fit, how to make the cloth stand the way she wants. I mean, I'm not a seamstress, but I still find it interesting. So I hadn't known some of that. And I think sometimes that's one of the other things. It's like J.K. Rowling, right? We'll pick her lady of the day, right? Everyone's heard J.K. after all. She gets a lot of rep for being anti-trans. But at the same time, she's kind of not. But she said a few poor choice words. She's done a few things. But it doesn't stop Harry Potter being a popular book. But at the same time, why would you hate the book for something that the person who did, but if you didn't know they'd done that, you wouldn't hate the book. So you don't hate the book for hating the book. You're hating the book for a reason that's outside its control. And so I look at her videos and I kind of I kind of watch how she does it and how she works out the thing and how she fits them to herself, because obviously she, that's how that works, and all of those kind of things. But at the same time, I'm not necessarily aware of any of the other politically levelled stuff she does. But I do, I'm no seamstress. The last thing I made was when I was at school. It was a pencil skirt out of corduroy. That shows my age. And my mother insisted I made something, and I was not really up for making it, but I made it anyway. And I never got to wear it, by the way, so let's just settle that one. But I made it anyway, and she was appalled because we had a slit up the back. Oh my goodness, what a tart. And so I didn't get to wear any. But I still made it. She made me, And that's the last thing I ever truly made that was an item of clothing other than knitting jumpers. So, but I don't know what the trauma Kathy Hay was, but I do know that part of the reason she sounds so bad is because of some trauma she went through in her life. And it may be that those self-help things had helped her. Now, sometimes the strangest thing can help you. It does not have to be a traditionally helping thing. So maybe she read them and they meant something to her. Wouldn't work for... Yes. Well, to be fair, the speed she works on them does seem a little bit, lacking. But it is, especially as it doesn't seem like she's kind of got a 9-to-5 job or anything, so you would expect significantly more progress than perhaps is displayed. But as you say, it is... We can all be hypocritical, though, and I know I can do it too. I've sat here through the stuff that I'm going through that I can't overly talk about, getting a bit frustrated with someone because they're kind of sticking their head in the sand and pretending it's not happening. But right here, right now, that's exactly what I want to do. I just want to wait till it's over and, tell me when it's done and that's fine. But that's not the right attitude. And it can be very easy, do as I say, not as I do. It can be very, very easy to be that person. And sometimes we expect too many people to be perfect. And she's made bad decisions. Who hasn't, right? Hello, I made bad decisions by using these thin-ass stupid pins that I really, really hate. But that doesn't mean that we're bad people. Good people make bad decisions. She may make an awful lot of bad decisions. Maybe she's just really shit at making good decisions. We can all be a bit of that. So, it's... my ex-husband's very liberal. I would never describe myself as liberal, but I do try and sit on the fence. I try and see other sides that may not be apparent. And I really struggle with that, especially with myself, because things that happen to me, and maybe it hurts me a lot, I take it real personal. Oh my God, I can take the strangest thing personal. But it is I try and help other people see that there could be other reasons, that there may be something else going on that you aren't aware of, that means that person X said this, did that, that this decision has been made, even if it seems half-witted, all these kind of things. I am that person. I try and find other views so that you cut to cast the doubt that it was malicious, deliberate, whatever, right? That maybe it was not thought of like that, maybe this was the case, maybe this, maybe that. And it's a really spiky fence where I end up sitting sometimes, because sometimes there really is fuck all that you can think of. But I still try to find that, well, what if? Because, and it's not that I think people are good, because actually I'm not a people person at all. Hence I don't really leave my house and have no intention of changing that. But it is I don't want other people to be as miserable as me, and apparently it's a very common trauma response, and then it's kind of like, okay, I'll take that. I'll take that, but I'm not entirely with it. That because I've had issues, I don't want other people to go through what I've done, so I try and help them not to be me. And there is a bit of that. But at the same time, it's not always possible, because of course I don't know everything. I don't know half these people. Maybe they're just an asshole. I mean, there's plenty of them. I think pretty much, no offence to all of you lot, but the world seems to be predominantly full of assholes. They certainly seem to breed well, that's for sure. And some of them are dumber than a bunch of rocks. It's like, I know that it's a bit of a meme thing, but it's people born since 2010 are all going to see the year 3000. No, they're not, love. No, they're not. Come on, let's pick this up a bit. He really does. I try sometimes to separate people from their thoughts and personalities. So, for example, I am not overly religious. I was brought up Church of England. I don't disagree with it. I don't go and mumble to God every Sunday on a pew, however. But at the same time, as a kid, I did bell ringing. I was in the church choir. Thanks, it got me away from my parents, and it was one of the few things they let me do. But that being said, I even joined the Happy Clappy Society at one point. The New Age Christians, for those who aren't aware of what we British tend to call them. So it is and I was quite happy. Christ, I was even in the band in one of them for a while, playing a gay bass guitar for some reason, which is not one of my own instruments. But there we go. But it was one of those things, is that if you have a really strong religion that's not mine, I don't care. If it makes you happy, I'm happy for you. If you expect me to change and believe in yours, we're going to have an argument about it. Because kind of not. But if you won't force me to do yours, I won't force you to do mine. We'll get on just fine. I don't care whether you're blue, green, black, brown, alien, whether you're I do draw the line if you truly believe you're a cat. You're allowed to believe you're a cat in an online game. That's cool. Well down for that. But not in reality. If you truly expect me to put a glitter box in my hallway, I will have a problem with that. But much beyond that, if you want to turn around and say that, you're a fairy, you be a fairy, love. Really don't mind. It's your life, as long as you're not dragging me in it. I'll even call you a fairy. I have no problem if that makes you happy. So I'm quite easygoing to a large extent, which usually means it takes quite a lot to upset me in many ways. But at the same time, once you've achieved it, it is very difficult to claw your way back. And so I try and keep an awful lot of the personal views out of it, because, for example, let's pretend you all love sprouts with all your heart, and every single one of you, it's your favourite food. The next time I ever eat a sprout will be once I'm dead and you forced it in my mouth, because I will not knowingly ever eat a sprout ever again. I've been like this for many years, right? But that doesn't mean we can't be friends. Exactly. You can agree to disagree. You do not have to all believe in exactly the same things to get along. You can go, not overly keen on that, so maybe we'll try avoiding those subjects, because I know that that's just going to slightly, it's going to irritate me, and I might say something that will irritate you, so we won't talk about that. That's fine. It might be money, politics, religion, whatever it is, right? Did we land on the moon? Did we not land on the moon? There's a whole force of... Thank you for that. Someone's sneezing in their sleep. That's right, little pups. But, did we land on the moon? Didn't we land on the moon? You could have an interesting conversation about it. But if it's going to get really personal and snipey about it, let's not, right? And so, as you say, you can do quite a lot without being an arse. And it doesn't take a huge amount of effort not to be an arse. Now, for some people, it does. And for those people, I try to avoid you because, well, if you can't even be civil just for the sake of it. I mean, I've always said this about weddings. If you have to fight at a wedding and you can't hold your stuff for, the hour in church or whatever it's going to be, don't come. Because, seriously, it's not your day, it's somebody else's day. Keep your gob shut, even if you utterly loathe, hate and detest every single one on the other side of the church. Shut up, it's not your day, keep away from it, don't, just leave it, right? And, if you've got to make a fight out of it and you're looking at my bird, let's not do that today. And I mean, I work with people. There are some people I have worked with in the past. Maybe some of them a bit more current than or not as in the past as perhaps I'd like. I think that's more accurate. They're not as far away as I would like. But I would like to believe they have no idea how much I would really wish the world would open up and swallow them. Or that their server would burst into flames or something, right? And they get in trouble. It's, occasionally we dream of torturous things for annoying people. We don't necessarily mean it, but occasionally you're just kind of like, it's just good. And we do training every year on shooters at work and what to do should there be a shooter at work. And kind of when it first came out, lots of people, I don't understand how people could do that. And I'm like, I've seen you F-blind ran and go red in the face and almost turn into an aubergine, eggplant, in colour because someone's wound you up. And you're telling me if you didn't have a gun in your car, you would not have been tempted to go and sort that out. Really? Because I've seen people so lose their stuff at work and it's kind of like, wow, holy crap, that's scary. But I'm not saying I condone any of it, but at the same time, there is a bit of me that can understand being at a point, having those facilities and not being able to go, I can't do that. And this is part of the reason we in Britain have gun laws. That means we don't have guns. We're not allowed to carry them around because, well, it stops that kind of crap. And as a result, we don't have guns at home either. So we can't even kind of, go and, when your neighbour's dog's been barking for like the last 36 hours, go and let the poor thing out of its suffering. Because, well, there's reasons for that. And you have to call people and they come and they go, oh, you need to keep a record. And, nothing really happens. But it is the way of being British. But at the same time, you can see that, when you've had Mrs. Outback's dog barking for the last 36 hours straight and you just have had enough, that a lesser man could be drawn to do this. And it's not that you agree with it, but you could see in that moment that under sheer frustration, things that you would not normally do could be done by someone else. And so, I certainly agree that slapping a few co-workers would. I quite a few years ago came up with a concept called National Slap Amnesty Day. So it's a bit like the Purge, but in slaps. So on Slap Day, you are permitted to have drawn up a list of people to slap. You are only given so many slaps that you may give out, and you cannot on the day alter your list, so you cannot retaliate. You can hold a grudge till next year, but you will have found other people to slap since then. So let's say it's your top 5 people, right? So maybe your boss is the first one, because bosses are often the people who annoy you the most because they're a major part of your life. Maybe it's a partner, one of your children, your neighbour, whatever, right? And maybe that's your list, and you're good. You are allowed one slap. Only the one. You can't repeatedly slap. You get one chance to slap person, right? And they are not allowed to slap you back unless you're on their list too, right? the first year, some people will frankly lose half their face because, well, they've annoyed basically everyone they've met for the last year. And so everyone's got them on their list, and you know, come slap day, there is a really long queue. And at 9 o'clock, you start queuing up, and maybe you get to do your slap at 3 o'clock, you know. Knowing that you'll be slapped in the following year, well, you're gonna be a bit more thoughtful about some of the people you annoy now, aren't you? Because some people slap better than others. Now, historically, mothers have a real good slap. If you've ever been a child and slapped by your parents, I know that in later days, fewer people got the slap. But if you're my age, you got slapped at some point, if not more than some points, maybe a lot of points. I didn't get many, but I remember most of them. I remember one, and I kid you not, I was on toddler reins. Now, I don't actually know how old I was, but I remember the fucking slap, and I remember what I did. I had a dog called Sandy. Well, my parents had a dog called Sandy. Obviously, I was on leading reins. I didn't have shit, other than maybe poo in my nappy. Dog A growled and went for my dog. I got in the middle and held them apart. I got the slap of a century out of that. I got a slap in the century for breaking my mother's... Oh my god, you have no idea how hideous this object was. It was a hairbrush. It was dango orange Bakelite, and I dropped it. It landed on the sink and snapped in half, because Bakelite is actually quite fragile if you drop it right. And I didn't add one. Idiot. Anyway, I dropped it, it broke, I put it behind the curtain, pretended it wasn't me. When you're an only child, you're an idiot. Because, well, your parents are likely to know whether it was them, because, well, they're parents and they talk. So, me going, wasn't me, a bit shaggy kind of, caught me on the counter, wasn't me, ain't gonna work, because you can hardly blame it on the dog, especially as it was hidden behind the curtain. So, and I was like, but it was like that when I found it. Fuck you, of course it wasn't. I got slap of the century from that, and I'm pretty sure CSI could probably still find a handprint from that. So, we back then, getting a slap was definitely a thing. But it also meant that you knew, should you be an arse, and you usually had to be pretty good of an arse to do it, this was one of the potential solutions for that, was the comeuppance of lying badly to your parents meant you'd get a slap. Maybe the slipper. I did have a slipper a couple of times, but funnily enough, the dog used to growl at my dad if he was going to give me a slipper. If my mum was handing out slaps, he was, I'm sorry, Liz, you're on your own for that one. I'm not getting in for that one, because I'll get one and all. Whereas he used to try and tell my dad not to. So, it was... I don't regret getting the slaps I got as a kid. I mean, I actually honestly told my parents, and I genuinely mean it, still to this day, even though one of them's in a box in my other room, and the other one, so I don't know where that one is, but at the age of 16 and a half, I went out, having agreed with my parents I could be home late. Now, my normal home time had to be 9 o'clock at the age of 16. Seems very early for everyone else. I bartered like arse to get it that late, so, I was on a winner at that point. And I was only permitted certain places with certain people. I had to be known where I was going. They had to have a number. My parents were very Victorian in this kind of shenanigans, right? So if I tell you I was 4 miles down the road in a church hall, for which they knew which church hall, where it was, the phone number, and the people I would be with mostly were retired. So I was not down the club, knocking drugs and booze. I was drinking tea, having dinner, and playing indoor kind of, well, it was indoor cricket but with a bunch of really weird rules. By the way, we won that year, and I caught the bloke who gave me a lift out, and I was really popular because I caught it one-handed. Hurrah! Yeah, I did still feel slightly good about that. Funnily enough, I still talk to him today. But my parents knew exactly where I was, exactly what I was doing, who I was with, and we'd agreed late. Now, to you and me, late is late. It is not a specific time. We'd never discussed that late was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12. I rocked home at 1:30 in the morning, having been gas bagging, because, well, clearly I can gas bag. My parents were livid. My parents were climbing the walls, claiming that they didn't know where I was, and that how dare I, and oh, I'm so irresponsible. My parents were against everything American, by the way, so I never got to do trick-or-treating. But oddly enough, they were suddenly all for grounding, which was not generically a British thing. So I got grounded. I did not get grounded for a week. I did not get grounded for 2 weeks. I was grounded for 6 months. But we only agreed on late. That apparently meant 10 o'clock. But you didn't say that, Dad. So we had... And I explained to my parents a few times over the years, I would much rather at the age of 16 and a half have come home, you put me over your knee, and you tanned my arse with a slipper, than you grounded me for 6 months, because week or so, maybe 2 weeks, yeah, maybe I deserved that. Although you weren't accurate, so you really should have worn some of that. After that, I just resented you. I resented you with all my soul. I hated you for that. I downright hated my parents for it, because it was not a punishment to fit the crime. If I had been out clubbing, if I had, lied where I was going, if any of those kind of things were true, fine. But I hadn't. They had known exactly where I was. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it was unfair. And I'm sorry, but if you want me home by 10 o'clock, tell me you can stay out later than normal, but you've got to be home by 10 o'clock. Or you've got to be home before 11, or pick a time. Don't say late and then get pissy when, because late isn't a time, I come home late, but it's not the idea of what you meant by late. I mean, I came home. What more do you want? And it's not like I was sleeping my way round. I was with the most boring bunch of people you've ever met in your entire life. But they were my people. They were people I'd gotten to know over the years. And so I'm sorry, but if you'd been that pissed, why didn't you ring? Why didn't you come and get me? Oh, you weren't that bothered then? And so we discussed it a few times, and it really was. And he actually said he found it funny that I would much rather have had a slap on the arse and, maybe walked a bit funny for a couple of days than the punishment that I got. And I think I think at one point he did actually agree that it was a bit of an overreaction, but once they'd said it, they were going to live by it. And it's kind of like, yeah, I actually possibly resented you more for that, because of course... You see, I mean, no offence, but at least maybe they didn't know where you were. My parents knew I was in Hillingdon frigging town church hall with the vicar, a bunch of people whose average age was 60 plus. I mean, there were a few younger ones, but we really were like 5 out of 60 people. And I was the youngest by quite a stretch. And I'm sorry, but they knew to the inch kind of where I was. I mean, we didn't have mobile phones and stuff, but they had a phone number. They knew the names of everybody there. Oh, come on, please. It was just, a little excessive. And so I did feel slightly hard done by on that one. But there were certainly other times I deserved everything I got. You know, I lied, I paid the price. Fair enough. And I don't look back and think my parents did me wrong, except on that occasion. And they didn't even slap me on that one. The one time I would have felt it was fair, and they didn't do it. But, I'm not saying that I believe all children need smacks. I do believe that there are children who would be better people if they'd had one in their life. Or at least some strong discipline of some form. A slap's possibly not the right answer, but you never know. But we've all seen some screaming, wailing monstrosities that, it's kind of like, because you didn't buy them the. Well, there was a clip going around a good few years ago now of some girl who her parents bought her a brand new car. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you Brits, as a child, if your parents even helped you buy a car, you did not get a brand new one. You got the 500 quid, barely kind of road legal piece of crap with rust in it kind of level car, right? I had to buy my own. And this girl had got brand new, spanking, decent car. I mean, it wasn't a Lamborghini, but it was a decent car. And before her birthday party, they gave her the car. They showed her the car that they bought. Oops. That was worth a try. I mean, I'd have tried it for sure. Mind you, my mother didn't drink. She claimed she was allergic to alcohol. No, she just got drunk as a skunk really easily, and she's an alcoholic now, so clearly not allergic to it. Well, she was an alcoholic last I heard of her. I believe she has passed since then, but, it is, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know where she is, if she's alive or not. I believe she is not, but I could be wrong. But my dad used to occasionally have something, but it was very, very rare. My family just never really did, and as a result, I don't. It's just not something I think about. And I could. I mean, I can drink reasonably well if I want to, as long as it's not fizzy, but it's just not something we do. But, for me, it's, you sit there and you go, I know that I've met children who are so rude, so foul, so demanding, and if at any point in their life they'd been told no, and if they kept at it, had a slap, they almost certainly wouldn't be the people they are today. And this girl got her car, and it wasn't the colour she wanted, although it was not a bad car. It's not like they painted it, Dynarod pink or something. And she screamed about how her parents had wrecked her life because they'd given her it before her birthday party, and that it wasn't a surprise so all of her friends could see, and it was the wrong colour, and how dare they. You ungrateful little witch. Oh, I'd have taken the damn thing back and, flashed the frigging car keys. I'd have just taken it back and got my money back. But how could you be so rude? I mean, my 21st birthday present was a 5p book from a charity shop. Did I want it? No. Did I ever read it? No. Did I like it? No. But it was still what I got. I didn't scream at my mother how badly she wrecked my life because that's what she got me. I moan about it occasionally as an adult, but I didn't scream and wail like a 3-year-old not getting a lollipop. I probably had a face a bit like, really? That? You bought me that? And then, thank you, Mum, it's really nice. Oh, fuck, what do I do with this? Oh, I can put it on a shelf, I suppose. But, it was one of those kind of moments. It's a bit like the thing your aunt gave you, but you don't know what it is. Cheers, Gran! What the fuck is this thing? Anyone know what this is? What do I do with it? But you do. You sit and you drag it out so it's moved for next time. It's. But I don't condone slapping kids just because they breathe funny. But at times there are definitely children who needed far more discipline than they've got, and how best their parents felt to hand that over, they have failed in creating a socially acceptable child. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Yeah, very controversial, I know. But hey, if you can't discuss it as adults, what can you do? I was discussing last night with a co-worker, what happens when I die? I've got no one to leave my crap to. And we were joking, kind of semi-joking anyway, potentially I could leave stuff to his children. I've got no one else to leave it to. And I don't want the government to get it, so, if it really comes down to it, I'd rather they had it than the government, so it is that kind of deal. I've no intention on, although I know on Wednesday it was a bit closer than I like to think, but, realistically, I don't really want to depart this coil yet. I've got plenty of placemaking to do yet. But it is that kind of thing, is that we have lots of taboos about things we shouldn't talk about and things, but you should be able to have a different point of view and have a reasonable conversation about it. And it doesn't matter how much that the other person is well outside your comfort zone. So maybe they believe something in your eyes absolutely hideous. But until you hear their reason why, until you hear their understanding, I'm not going to say they necessarily will change your mind, because, maybe that's not a thing that needs changing. But maybe you will understand, to an extent, why they have chosen and made their choices. Because after all, we do not have to agree with them. It's not our lives. We don't need to worry about it. So yeah, I have a fascination for understanding other people's points of view, which is why I sit on the fence a lot and try and see other reasons that people might have done something that maybe truly upset somebody else, and it's trying to think that it's not personal, or trying to think that maybe they just never thought of, the person who did the wrong thing never thought to think of it in that way, because it's not something that's, ever been a problem in their life, or something that they would never have given a thought to. Because quite a lot of the time, unless it's, something that you or someone you know of has had happen to them, it is not a consideration for you. Because, it just seems, surely I can make a choice of my own, and, I'm entitled to an opinion, and I said my opinion, and this person ran off screaming and crying, and, we all know, we've all seen at some point usually, the woman in the office who only has to sit on a toilet seat and she's pregnant, right? She seems perpetually pregnant, doesn't know how it happened, and then there's always the one poor woman in the corner who's been trying for years, hasn't been able to, and, hearing that this one's pregnant again is a really sore subject. But it's not really either of them's fault that, it's a sore subject, and yet the one who's pregnant for the 928th time, and maybe doesn't know who the father is, etc., and there's this poor woman who's devoted to her beautiful husband and loves him with all her heart, would make great parents, and they don't seem to be able to have kids. And I have a couple of friends like that who would make the most great parents. She worked with challenged children, and when it came to adoption, they turned her down. Yet she works with everyone else's rejects, because they were rejected children she worked with. She worked with kind of kids who were kind of in foster strokes children's homes with severe mental issues. Yet when she wanted to sign up and actually have, kid of her own, they went, you can't have one. Why not? She looks after them on a daily basis. She looks after the, kids with some of the worst problems you're going to see. So it's not like she's going to object to having a child with a bit of an attitude. Why would this be a problem? Oh, she couldn't have a child. Oh, no. And yet they would have been the best parents. And then, kind of the Wayne and Waynettes of this world, kind of drop them like, leaves in autumn, and, and they're terrible parents. And it's, I'm not saying that we should have, breeding licenses or such, although there are occasions when I've seen children and thought, you really, really should have had one. But it is that kind of, life is not fair. Life is distinctly unfair. And, the people who deserve to have children and be happy don't always get that chance, and it's a shame. I mean, I didn't want any. I did originally, way back when. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This isn't right. Why is this not right? Because that implies I've added one, but I haven't added one. We've gone wrong somewhere, people. So that's 5 and it shouldn't be 5. Oh, it's because I haven't chucked one, that's why. So I need to chuck one. It is alright. That's okay, let's put you back. But yeah, these people would have made the best parents in the world. Another couple of my friends really struggled to have children. They had to do IVF. And they now have 2 very beautiful children. Well, it's hard to call one of them a child now, but 2 very beautiful children. And so how do you I know that, they've had their struggles. And, did they always do the right thing? Probably not. There's bound to be times when, no, they didn't. But I still would support them, even if I didn't agree with it. It's their lives, They're allowed to make their own stupid decisions, and it is the way of the world. So, yes. Anyway, we should talk about honour and happier things. We have adverts in 3 minutes. It's been an hour. Did you realise that? There's the hole. There's the hole. Stupid bendy pins. So, I think it's time for another stick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes. Stick. And any of you who's seen the short videos of stick, yeah, that does go through my mind every time I say stick. It's the dog owner in me. Alright, let's put that up there. You get to come around here. So yes. Oh. My back's doing better today. We've been going 2.5 hours and haven't complained about it yet. Ads. There's 2 pins. Go away. Get out of the pins. Nearly done with the ads. Now let's get off the pins. There you go. That's the ads done for the art. Nearly at the corner. Nearly. I might do what I do most Fridays, which is well, that's sounding positive. Sometimes positive things can be very small, but they all count. Certainly for what you do, I can understand that. You see, I've got a program that I can kind of click on dots where pins might be and say, put that there, literally, right? And so I've got a tool that draws all mine for me. When it comes to the work that you do, obviously, in theory, there is no reason why there can't be a computer program that allows you to, in effect, plot out and draw what you want. But I also wouldn't be surprised to hear that there isn't one yet. And to get all the twists, to get the exact turning, to plan maybe some of the colour shading by using different ropes and things, and it's something that takes a lot of concentration and probably is very easy to screw up through tiny, minute. I mean, it's like cross stitch. Cross stitch is really easy to screw up because you start one stitch out in one place, don't realise until about 3 weeks later when you go to fill in another bit and actually realise that either it's blocking or it's you can't put 3 there because there's only room for 2, or actually there's room for 4 and that's even worse. And it must be hard to draw it out on paper in a way because of course it's a 3D thing, and as we know, while we can fool the brain into doing 3D things on paper, it doesn't show what happens behind. And obviously, for example, there could be complicated twistings behind a flatter section at the front. So you could have a double twist of things behind the scenes, and all you've got on your piece of paper is straight lines. But only you've almost got to draw the front and the back so that you can work it out. And then, of course, you've got to make sure you line it up, and then you've got to make sure that you didn't move that 1/4 slightly differently in one square to the edge, because I'm sure, like the rest of us, you join up dots on a piece of square paper. So it's, you know, there is a lot of that I'm sure goes on. And as we've talked about before, sometimes I think the effort that can go into a crafting piece really can escape someone who is not of crafting mind, because they look at it and go, well, I could do that. Well, yes, actually, you almost certainly could. Should you have bothered and tried it, but you didn't. And because, to be honest, any of you could do what I'm doing. I mean, you can pick up a bobbin and put it down. You can do this. I am no guru, genius, or master. And so it is one of those things, is that, yes, I honestly believe that anyone could do this. Whether they'd choose to, whether they'd have the patience to make 18 of these bloody squares, even I'm doubting how much patience I've got to make 18 wretched squares, but maybe I'll end up with a half window net curtain or something. But, you know, I can try. I'm aiming for 18. I am aiming for 18. But, you know, at the end of it, with your, you know, let's call it rope twisting, because I'm sorry, but macrame makes it sound really twee and nasty and 70s, and it's not. So with your rope twisting, you do put a lot of thought and effort into making something, to recreate something, or to invent something completely new. Now, sure, technically out there, maybe someone else has had the same thought, because much like twistings of these threads, you see, I'm the other way round. I write computer programs. In, you know, my other part of my life, I write computer programs, and I would say I write some games. I've mentioned silly games.online, and they are a bit pants. I don't pretend that they're not. But I am self-taught, so bite me. But I've been a programmer since I was a child, and I will never lose that. And there is a part of me that looks at the latest program that I've got and goes, I paid money for this, and it breaks so many UI rules, so many traditions. So for most of us, if you have a number of things on screen that you can select, if you select them, you normally press Shift to mass select them, or Control to pick up individual ones. But if you right click on one with Control, it usually unselects it. This doesn't. This, if you add one, just one out of 100 by mistake, you now have to start again. If you're doing something and you say, place this picture here, it's like it's stuck that way until you right click. If you're drawing lines like the zigzags on my pattern below that I'm doing now, you go clicky clicky between the dots, and it works really well. But to get rid of it, you've got to right click. But it doesn't right click and go, yeah, I've stopped on that dot. It does like a tangent line, and then you have to delete it because it's sticking out and it looks stupid. You can't, when you select things, you've got to kind of grid the selection, because if you've got snap to grid on, it draws zigzag selects random bullshit. Sometimes even when you haven't got the snap to grid on, you draw a circle or a square or whatever around a whole load of things. Well, it will select one side but not the other. Why not? Well, it just didn't. And you can't. So if you've got like my zigzag line, I can't double click on the zigzags and select all of them. You can't expand on that selection. You have to individually click each and every one. Or you've got to have known in advance and remembered and put it on a completely different layer so that you can select everything on that layer. And there is just a bit of you sometimes that goes, I just want to select that bit. And, you know, like my zigzags, and say move them over one pin because I actually want to do a different stitch. Or I want to select all of these, can't do all of something. You can't say select all the rose ground because, yeah, you can't do that. There's a whole host of things that just don't feel normal. And as someone who works with computers morning, noon and night, computers have a feel. Programs have a feel. And yes, I struggle, for example, with the difference between Unity and Blender because they use different keys for different things. But a lot of the concepts between the movement and the positions and the rotations and all of that's the same. They might call it something slightly different. They might use a different menu key. But the truth of it is other than the moving around because they don't use the same keys, which infuriates me a lot, it's the same stuff. Whereas this just doesn't feel... I don't feel at home with it. And, you know, oh, well, if you're struggling, you can buy the £35 book on it. I should not have to pay for an additional £35 book for a piece of software that basically allows you to put dots on a screen. After all, I didn't even need a book to learn Photoshop. I didn't. And yet you're telling me, oh, well, why don't you buy a £35 book? Why don't you just write a program that's normal? I don't need books to learn programming languages. Why would I need one to put dots? And so I'm more likely to write the software than anything else. And I have strongly considered. Excuse me, I need to yawn. I strongly considered writing a weaving piece of software, but I found one that works really well and it's free, even better. The Lace 8 program that I'm using, I do have problems with because I know I actually bought it quite a while ago and didn't really use it. But the first time I fired it up, I found a load of really stupid bugs. So, for example, in most dialogue boxes where you're given a yes/no, one of them is marked as default and you press enter and it selects it. The tab order of buttons is usually in a logical order. Some of these are not. So when you go to do something, you press tab thinking it'll move on a button and it doesn't. It leaps somewhere else and then it comes back because they haven't sorted the tab order out. And I wrote her a load of bugs because it's sold by a lady, but she doesn't write it. She's a lace maker. The guy who writes it isn't. That's fine because you don't need to be. You really don't. But at the same time, she's not able to understand computer questions or computer statements. So you're almost stuck between a rock and a hard place because you've got to explain it to a woman who won't let you speak to the guy at the back end directly. She doesn't understand the computer side of it, so can't explain it, and he doesn't understand the lace bit. Is it too surprising then that it's kind of got some wonkiness? But if I tell you that in what must be nearly 8 years, they've never fixed one bug. There is not a new version out. And yet they're still charging for it. And it's got quite a few interesting quirks where you can select everything and some of them will disappear. So you'll draw a load of dots, say, like I've got on my pattern. Draw a load of dots, you highlight them all, you move them, and some of them disappear. There's a bug in it. If you can buy motifs, so like the little rose ground squares on my pattern, you can buy pre-drawn spiders and things. And there's only like 30 in a picture. So you open up a pattern, there's a load of them and you have to save them. I have a really high spec machine. I kid you not. I have basically the highest spec currently available. My machine chews on that and nearly dies. And you're kind of going, what, over 30 little things? If it really struggles with that, there's something wrong with your code, dude. And it's really hard. I mean, as a developer, it is quite frustrating when someone comes along and goes, I think this is shit. Well, you're allowed to think it's shit, but why do you think it's shit? And so that, I reported some bugs, and I've got a bug in a particular piece of software that I use. And I've reported the problem, and they pretty much blame me for it every time. Oh, it's because you've set this, or you've typed this, or you've used this A. Actually, they were the default ones, so if you're telling me that we shouldn't be using those, maybe you shouldn't have them as the default setting? Anyway, I recreated my problem in a really simple thing. Create 2 boxes, so like cardboard boxes, seal them up with a light inside one of them. You should not see the light in the other one. And on the screen, you could. So I sent it in as a bug. And they went, oh, it's because you set this. What part of? I created this, I made 2 boxes, put a light in one of them. Everything else is as it came out the tin. So you're telling me that out the tin, your settings are wrong. Don't you think that's kind of might be what part of what I'm reporting the problem is that you default to settings that create an incorrect environment. But they closed it anyway. And it is frustrating as a developer to hear that people have got problems with it. I used to write a piece of software, and one of the things you could do was change the colour of it. So it was a text-based game. Well, it allowed you to use text-based games more accurately. So a bit like Twitch chat, if you think, you've got your names, some of them are in colour, there's a few icons. But imagine if, for example, you could put colours on words in quotes or, round links or whatever, right? And maybe you're colourblind, so you want to change some of the colours so that you can spot them better. I put squares for each of the colours that were already in use by the text with an example piece of text on the screen and said, click on the square that is the colour you wish to change. I got hundreds of emails over the years. I don't see how to change colour. Click on the square. What square? And I'd draw, I'd get a picture screen grab and do an arrow. This square. Oh, well, that's not intuitive. Well, what part of click on the square was unclear, dude? And so it can be frustrating. And I've been on that end of it. And it is frustrating when you're sitting there going, I don't know what else I can do for you. If you're telling me that you can't work out that this text and click on it is too hard, I mean, what can I do for you? How can I make this more obvious other than, have some AI bot, which of course we didn't have back then, explain it to you in very blunt, rude terms, click on the fucking box. So I have been on the end of that, and it is really infuriating when you've got some code that works everywhere but on some dude's machine, and it does really haywire, whack stuff, and you're kind of going, I didn't even know I had code that did that, and, all of those kind of moments, and it can be very frustrating when they can't explain to you how they did it. I remember at work, it was not the company I work for now, so I'm quite free to talk about it, seeing as the company doesn't even exist anymore, but they ran a piece of software, and I got told, well, every time I run this, I always get this error that says, do you want to cancel the program? Yes, no. And I'm like, we turn the ability to do that off. Hang on. And he kept saying, it happens every time I run the screen, every time I run the screen, every time I run the screen. So I went and watched him. And he'd click on the button to load a screen, and obviously this was back in the day where computers were a lot slower. Let's just put it this way, the Pentium 400 wasn't out yet. And he was clicking on it, and before it really loaded, he was whacking the escape a bunch of times. Well, so as it loaded the file, before it got to the don't allow escape bit, it had the escape and asked him if he wanted to cancel. And it's like, dude, just wait till the screen draws, then you can hit escape. Oh, okay. You didn't think of that? It is much like we were saying earlier about, 28 days for delivery. Now, if it's not here tomorrow, we're all in a fit of rage. We do the same with software. We have a high expectation for them, and we want it to be right. And this it's not that we shouldn't want it to be right, because it should be right. But at the same time, it's very frustrating from a user perspective when the person who's selling the software is basically saying, I don't care that it doesn't work or it's not right, or that, it eats itself, or it doesn't draw properly, or it doesn't do all of these things, because, right? And, we as people, we as users get annoyed with that, because, sometimes the more you do it, the more you need to do it, and the worse it looks, right? It's a bit like a power cut. Once you've had a power cut, the more you need your power, right? But I have struggled with the lace making software just because it is really, really quirky. And some of the things that it does are just defy logic. They don't make any sense whatsoever. And it's really difficult to do some things with it. And in fact, I'm on a Facebook group for it. And there was, is it capable of doing that? Well, actually, yes, it is. But the options to actually do that are almost hidden from you if you're not paying attention. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, for example, they were asking, can you make a fan? Well, yes. When I made this, I made 1/4 and rotated it around. Well, you can do that, but instead of rotating around the middle, you rotate around a lower point, and it makes an arc, right? Oh, I didn't know it could do that. Well, that's because it's not obvious. That's because they hide it. And there are an awful lot of kind of menus within menus, down menus, and you know, if you're in this mode kind of thing, and not every user's got the patience to chase that, which of course is why there's a £35 book. And I'm sorry, but you shouldn't need a £35 book to go with a couple of £100 worth of software. You should be able to use it. And yes, you know, maybe for people who really want to get into some deep, dark depths of hidden settings or something that you can do within it, that would be alright. But for general practical use, you shouldn't need a basic, you know, from the how you open a file to, you know, printing it out. Because one of the problems I had originally was that I made a picture, well, I made a pattern, and I liked it, that was good. And 1, 2, 3, 4, missed one somewhere. Did I add one? No, I didn't. And, you know, I couldn't work out why when I printed it, it didn't look right. Well, the simple answer is when you're in the program designing it, you say, give me it at, you know, I want, you know, the dots to snap at, say, 5mm. Very huge. These are 2.5 or something. But let's say you want the dots to snap to 5mm. Well, when you print it, it doesn't use that. So even though you designed it to be 5mm, it doesn't default and say, do you want to print it at this scale or pick a new one? It picks a default scale and doesn't tell you. Well, it does tell you in some really small print that maybe you didn't look at. But the truth of it is it doesn't default to the scale you set. Well, it doesn't necessarily even default to inches and centimetres that you set. And there is a little bit of you that kind of goes, I'm sorry, but if I set this up to be, you know, a 6-inch square, I want it to be a 6-inch square. I didn't design it to be a 1-inch square. If I'd wanted to do a 1-inch square, I'd have made it a 1-inch square and blown it up, because you've got a zoom in factor, on my screen. There's also things about threads. So when you come to, you can put threads and you can put wraps per inch and stuff. But if it says you can pick by grid size or you can pick by thread. Well, if you pick by thread, it doesn't resize it. Think about that one. What's the point in that then? There are some distinct, interesting quirks. And as I say, there are times when you do something and it eats half of what you did, and you're kind of going, I made, say, a diamond of rose ground, and you've eaten half the dots. So now I've got to manually go and put all the dots back in. But if I undo it, the dots are there. But if I copy it again, you'll still tell me there are no dots in those positions, but I can see them. And so it is quite a frustrating piece of software, and I have thought about writing my own, just because I can. But I'm in a lace making mood, not a computer programming mood. I have been in a computer programming mood, which was why I haven't really done much this last year, except for doing a bit of lace for the last couple of months. I went through a bit of I will do computery things, but due to a bug in Unity with lighting, it's well burst that bubble. That bubble has long since sailed. Dungeon disasters will never happen. I've got a whole book of ideas on it, and there were some interesting ideas, and some fun things that I was really looking forward to making. But to be honest, if I cannot draw a maze and have the light only shine down the corridor where the light is in, I am not building that. I am not in the mood for that. And I am not prepared to fight Unity hack tooth and nail and maybe reinvent half a dozen wheels just because they've got a crappy system. I'm doing it. I want to do it because I enjoy it, not because I'm making up for someone else who sells this for money because bear in mind, as long if you make enough money, Unity expects you to pay. Now, all my stuff's free, so I don't have to worry about that. But they sell this stuff, and a lot for people who are in non-game making industries. So if you use it for, I don't know, racing cars or car design or making of adverts or anything like that, you pay a colossal amount of money for exactly the same program. But you need that license to do it. But you pay a colossal amount of money. Imagine how pissed you'd be in that scenario. Now, admittedly, you'd be less likely to be making a maze dungeon, but hey, maybe you're doing something internally. Well, you don't want leaks in anything. So I don't know. I've always been a bit faddy, especially with my crafting, but I do find myself struggling at the moment because I've got things in my head, and until they're sorted, there are just things in my head, and I want to do things. I want them to be good. I want to achieve lots of great things. I want to, I want the world to be a better place. I want to help people understand. I want people to realise they could do this too. That these hobbies do not have to die, kind of like with our generation. That, you could be 12 and do this. There is no reason why not. And if you want to learn, I am more than happy to sit down one stream and get a blank pillow, because it ain't like I haven't got plenty more. I mean, for example, that's not one. Where is the other one? Did I move it? Did I actually move it? Oh my god, I actually must have moved it. Oh no, there it is. Look, here's another one. I know you can't really see all of it, but look, it's a round one. It's down the back of my couch. And I've got a pile of them over there. So I could sit here and show you how to start, how to wind a bobbin, how to do some basic stitches. I could teach that. I don't believe there's a huge demand for it, but at the same time, if everyone was interested, I'd happily spend one evening showing some of that, because you don't need fancy bobbins, even though I love fancy bobbins. Remember I ordered a load of bobbins before I started all of this? They only put them in the post this week. I'm slightly annoyed, but you don't need fancy bobbins. You can have nasty Midland bobbins. You can have bits of close peg. I've got, she says, looking across, because they were over here. Hang on. They're not in the exact spot that I thought, but the dolly close pegs that look a bit like this, but have kind of like you have the peg bit at the bottom that you slot them over the cable. I used those to start with. I actually really liked them because they were chunky and they were big and a lot like these, which is why I bought these, because these were really like them but slightly less chunky. You do not need expensive stuff. My favourite pillow, which is not the round one, but is the lid of a cooler. It's actually my favourite. You don't need expensive stuff. You need a ball. You need a ball of sewing thread. Now, yes, you can buy proper, lace thread stuff, and technically it'll be better for it. But to practice with, you can use sewing thread. You can use the thin crochet thread. If that's what you've got around, frankly, you could use double knitting wool if that's all you've got. It'll be big, but you can do it. And so it is one of those things, is that you can have a go. Maybe you'll love it. Maybe you'll hate it. Maybe you'll think it's the dumbest, dullest thing in the world. But it doesn't stop. Everyone can try it if they want to. And if people wanted me to do a bit of a stream on learning it, there isn't a lot to learn, to be honest. Well, especially not when it... As I said, it comes down to 2 moves. All you have to do is then combinations of the 2 moves. So, it is... A lot can be done with those 2 moves. And so, as a result, you could make this. You could be making this net curtain. You could be making this square. You may not want to, and your sanity would probably thank you for it. But you could be making this square too. You could do it with me. I've always liked doing what I call hobbies that look like people are going to lose. The hobbies that are of times of the past that are no longer necessary. Because, we've got wool mills we don't need to spin. we've got knitting machines, and we've got slave labour, frankly, to make really cheap clothes. So we don't need to do any of that. Crochet, I've done tablet weaving and stuff. I really enjoy that. I really like some of the braids that it makes. But you don't need to do it. If I want a belt, I can go and buy one. It's not like it's going to cost me an arm and a leg. If I want a camera strap or a dog, I can make my dog a collar. I actually have thought of making them collars because... stop licking, dog. But it is, you can make them and you can personalise them. But they won't necessarily be any better or worse than a commercially made one. Honest answer, get a pair of bobbin, get a bit of string, wind it around the bobbin, wind the other, chop it, make a really long tail, wind the other end around the bobbin so you've got a loop of them, stuff a pin in, hook it over the pin, they then dangle, and now you've got a pair of bobbins to get more pins, hang another pair on, now you can play crossy with them. You have already started. It is actually no more complicated than that. Getting the strings to stay behind the pins, you tend to have to put them at a really kind of viciously steep angle, so that the string doesn't leap off when you're not looking. But usually you start with a pin to the side. So when I did the first corner, instead of putting the pin in right at the top, you put a pin in somewhere else, so that when you've done a bit of crossing over, that you can snug it against that first pin. And I don't see anyone there. Stop lying. But yeah, how to start? Most of the time you do start at a point. It is uncommon to start as a flat edge. You can start as a flat edge, and that one is more complicated, where you kind of work some of them sideways, then you pick some others up and work them that way, and then kind of they turn round the corners at the end. That is more complicated because you've got a lot of bobbins, you seem to be adding a lot of bobbins and getting nowhere fast, and then suddenly it kind of all comes together, and instead of a big kind of mess, it suddenly looks actually like you started working on it. But most things, traditionally bookmarks are the starting point. You can start with a flat top and just have a bit of a shitty start. But to make a nice kind of like straight start like you see on the edges of here, you have to do complicated things and have what known are passives, even though of course they're not passives. You just don't really move them around, you just work around them. So like when I'm doing cross stitch, I have these two that move backwards and forwards, but these ones all stay in order, and so for that, these technically are passive because they are not moving. Even though I'm lifting them up and moving, they do not move or cross or change position within the row, so they count as passive in that kind of scenario. And so usually you have like a passive pair that runs and makes a bit of a solid edge so that you can sew it to things, and because of course an awful lot of lace is made with the idea of sewing it to things. So yeah, it is. But we can do a start of things. We can do that at some point, and do it with some big chunky yarn so that you can really see what's going on and how it works, and some decent pins that hold shit, and none of this fiddly flimsy crap. We'll do it with some decent yarn. I've got some 8/4 cotton. I'm looking at it now. Actually, let me go and get a chunk. Hang on, where's my skizzers? Where's my skizzers? Let me go and get... Well, in this case, because in this particular cloth stitch, because of the direction that we're going in, I have 2 workers and 5 passives. Well, 5 passive pairs, more accurately. So I've technically got 10 strands of nothing, right? But let me just go and snip you a example of 8/4 cotton. Hang on. Come back. I wanted that bit. Snip. So, for example, this is my favourite weaving cotton. I love this stuff. Look how chunky it looks in comparison. Let me zoom in a bit on that and you'll see what I mean. Hang on. So as you can see, it's quite a bit thicker than the thread of the day. It is actually palpably visible. But we could use some of that and some bobbins and do a little kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's very... banana for scale. What have I got that's a blatant scale that people are aware of? Oh, come on, woman. I've got lots of things, but none of them are traditional things. How can I have an entire table full of shite and nothing as a scale that normal human beings would recognise? I've got some screws, but of course that doesn't tell you how big the screws are. I mean, for example, screws for size. Well, the only obvious thing, of course, is my hand. But of course, I could have really small hands or really big hands. I've got fairly big hands. I know what will be a reasonable scale. Let me grab this. An earbud. So you can see from that the thread itself is of reasonable size. Let me put the earbud on something a bit brighter. So you can see from that it's about that kind of size. Yeah, slightly thinner and a bit softer because it's kind of, well, cotton, not twine, but realistically it is, I'd call it thin string. It is not really thread anymore, it is more thin string. I make tea towels out of it because it doesn't half suck up a lot of water. But it is kind of, there are people who knit with stuff like that. It is not a lot thinner than the hand knit sock yarn. But obviously commercial socks are made out of fucking nothing, so not that kind of sock yarn. But hand knit sock yarn is not a lot fatter than that. I'm wondering if these needles have sizes on. I don't know. Because obviously the sticks that I use, for size, if I lay the knitting needle down next to it, I'm going to guess that this is a 2.5mm needle for scale. So it's kind of reasonable size. I have got a micrometer somewhere. I know what I might have. You know, phone's got a ruler on it. Actually, I've got a tape measure somewhere. I had a tape measure. What happened to that? Dogs, did you eat my tape measure? My tape measure is not where I'm expecting. Oh, there it is. It's not where I'm expecting. So let me have a look at these sticks. See if I can tell you how many millimetres these sticks are. Hang on. It'll be by eye, so it'll be not the most accurate shit in the world, but I'm right, about 2.5mm. I'm a sad bastard. Yeah, about 2.5mm is the knitting needle portions of this section. Yeah. So, you know, it's chunky, but to be honest, you could use large pieces of rope. You just have a job finding a bobbin to put it on. But you could do it with rope. You could do it with any of the rope sizes that you've got. It would just be bigger. And that is realistically true with all of it, is whether I use... I mean, to be honest, it would be really nice if I could have made my net curtain out of this stuff, because A, I've got more of this stuff than is humanly required in life. I really do. I have boxes of it and bags of it that I haven't unpacked because I haven't got enough boxes. But you know, I've got well, in this room alone, I've got 150. I've got 1.5 kilos of white, 1/2 kilo of beige, 1/2 kilo of black, and that's just the stuff I can see without moving. So, and that's the open stuff. Then there's the stuff in all the boxes and all the bags. So, you know, I've got quite a lot. But we could also use a colour that's not white, so that maybe it stands out a bit better. Beige might be an answer, but not on brown paper, obviously. But we could certainly do that, and you could have a look, because I think maybe there are some of the, let's call them stitches, some of the stitches in lace making that would make interesting detail on some of your rope twisting. So for example, much like torchon ground gives you these little kind of bobbly bits here, if you did a complicated Celtic knot ring with some of the gaps maybe filled in with the twisty torchon ground style, it gives you more of a lattice thing that maybe something else can work around. And it is food for thought, right? And I am very happy to share and help you understand more about how I do what I do, because, well, that's part of the reason of putting it out there, is so that someone might go, hey, how did you do that bit? And that's cool. Let's face it, in just over in about a kind of triangle and 3/4, I'll have to start a new square. You could get to watch me start a new square. Or you could go back and find the first square and watch how I started the first square. Don't worry, there's going to be another 17 squares. I'm going to do at least 17 more starts. But if we, like everything, I think that there's scope for everything. I think one of the things that could work quite well would be a wall hanging where you do your rope twisting in the middle and maybe a more lace kind of outer portion on it. You could do, almost some form of curtain, doing it your way, with something down the middle as the main core of it, and then kind of wee string at the sides to, provide a bit more down the side. There are lots of opportunities to mix and match, I think, and I think it's sometimes important not to get hung up on, but that's that craft and I'm doing this one, because lace makers, for example, there are many types of lace, and there are, as I've said before, there are similarities between them and there are differences between them. But there's no reason why you can't mix and match a bit. You're only twisting a piece of string around. I mean, there's no reason why you can't twist. If you like stitch from that one, then use stitch from that one. As long as there isn't a fundamental reason why you can't do it with the ones that you've got. So, for example, where a pin meets on this lace is always 2 pairs of bobbins meet for a pin. Occasionally it's a bit more, but normally is 2 pairs of bobbins meet for a pin. There are some laces where it's 4 pairs of bobbins meet for a pin. So it is always 4 pairs of bobbins. So it's very similar in the ground stitch, but you always have 4 pairs. Now, that sounds really complicated, and it does seem unnecessarily so. But what if you like it? Well, then you like it. Now, obviously, if I had 4 bobbins coming in every time, some of these stitches, the rose ground part, wouldn't work because you only need 2 for those. But that doesn't mean you couldn't do something with the extras. So, for example, if you take this diamond here in the middle, if I only need 2 per pin for this, all the extra pairs coming in round the edge that would also then leave again at the edge, well, if they stayed round the edge, that'd be fine. You could do something and, kind of involve a bit of cloth stitch around the edge with the extra pairs and do the thinner bit in the middle and then rejoin everyone with a friend at the other side. A bit of spider-like, because with spiders if this was a spider, so I'm not going to count how many there are. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be a 10-pin spider. You would take 10 pairs coming in from there, 10 pairs coming in from there. You would kind of cloth stitch them together and you twist them a lot. Cloth stitch so that all of these ones end up over here and all of those ones end up over here. Put a pin in and do it so they all turn back the way they came and go out again. Well, if you left a pair down the side, all you're doing is joining up when you get to the edge and whatever. There are always ways around it, and I think mixing and matching could make some really interesting and unique things. So, for example, some of the rope twisting that you do could help cover up some of my shitty edges. I could do you know, maybe with my 8/4 cotton, make a bit of a thicker edge to it, because then that'll cover all mask of manner of disasters. And, you know, even if all I did was kind of a 4-strand plait, which is easily done with lace bobbins, by the way. It's a lot easier to do with lace bobbins than it is to do with your hair, that's for sure. But I could do that with, you know, and make a kind of more ropes twisting edge to it. So to mask the disaster maybe of some screw ups or whatever. We have things called gimp. Now, obviously the 8/4 cottons may be normally deemed a little fat for the thread that I'm using as a gimp, but you use it to, say, go around the edges here to highlight the diamonds a little bit. Well, that's just fatter cotton or fatter rope. It's a very similar process, and so there is a lot of commonality. We just think of them in different terms, different names, and the fact that mine's all strung around little bobbins to keep them still instead of maybe, you know, a ball of twine. It's same shit, different name, really. Anyway, I'm going to take a bit of a break. I'm going to order me some food. I'm going to hug the dogs, feed the dogs because they haven't been fed yet, and I think they're getting a bit antsy because they haven't been fed yet. But I will hopefully be back later. I'm feeling a lot more positive. We got some done today. Maybe not quite as much as I'd like, but I can upload that. And I'll hope to be back in about 2.5, 3 hours, around that kind of time frame. So look out for the ping if you have followed. And I shall hope to be back, and we will continue on, and we will be looking to start the ground stitch there and working our way through the middle. So we're getting there. Didn't do as much as I wanted to do today, but we didn't do bad. It wasn't bad. We did cloth stitch. We did the rose ground. We did some cloth stitch. We did some ground. So and I can always point you to some YouTube videos in case my own tutorage is off-putting, because I'm a bit weird. But there are certainly places you can certainly learn on everything you need online without spending a crap ton of money. So as an experiment and a kind of deviation from your normal things to do, you can certainly have a go. You only really need a towel. You can make do with a cushion, a towel, some clothes pegs, and some string, and a few needle pins but realistically, that's all you actually need to have a go the first time. It will look a bit wonky, but hey, your first piece always looks a bit wonky, so why fight it? I shall speak to you later, and hopefully, if not, I will be around tomorrow, because now we've got pins, we should be good for that. By the way, I didn't use half as many of my pins today, but I did use a few. And I'm kind of the same with all crafts, in the sense of, well, as I said to you, I do not need a solitary lace thing in my entire existence. Lace is not me, but I still want to make it because I find it interesting. I don't, you know, the only reason I'm making a net curtain is the only thing I could think of that I'd actually maybe use. I'm certainly not going to wear any of it, and I don't need bookmarks. So I'd rather make something that I might use, or at least I could put up and pretend that I'm using it. Yes, almost certainly. And I think that you know, almost is definitely a thing. Although I think they usually use nail binding for that. But again, you can do nail binding, you can do needle lace, and they're all really fucking similar shit. Nail binding uses a needle but no thing to attach to. Needle lace attaches it to a thing and you try and pretend that it makes sense. And obviously lace making, you pin it all down but it's not really attached to anything. So it's kind of, but it's the same kind of shit. So I do think you're right. I think you probably could make a really good kind of shrimp net with it. So yeah, it's a thing. We can work on that. We can have a go. It can be a thing. I can plan for that. If nothing else, I can always record you a video of starting and making some ground stitch and a few choices, and because half stitch may also be up your alley. We haven't done half stitch here, but half stitch, the ground stitches are made of half stitches, but if you keep doing those, you end up with kind of like little triangles, and that can work really well, and that's a piece of piss. And you can just kind of go nuts doing that because it really takes no brain cells and not a lot of pins because you don't have to pin it every 3 seconds. You only pin it at the edges. Fucking result. So that can work really well. But we can talk about those. We can do things. We can have fun and experiment because, well, that's what it's all about, isn't it? And like you say, is that just because it's not your bag, but it could be a bag, but maybe not for the reason other people might do it. But who says you've got to agree with them? So I shall be back later. Hopefully I shall see you all and we can continue. Have fun. Bye bye.